Chapter 12:35. These bodyguards might not be able to outtalk the people from the investigation team, but if they were to fight, who would be their match? At that moment, the bodyguards swarmed forward, and the 5 members of the investigation team, including Mald, were crudely pressed to the ground. "What are you doing? Are you trying to rebel?" Muda was furious when he saw that his division commander had actually made the first move. "Hee, it's not up to you to decide whether we're rebelling or not. I see that you don't have any other abilities, but you're quite good at making accusations. Men, lock them up and interrogate them properly. I want to see how clean they are." Xianxia was also furious. This time, he wanted to investigate them properly. Since he had already made a move, he wanted to see things through to the end. He had a feeling that there must be something behind Muda, who was easily bullied and feared the strong. Xianxia immediately took action and captured him. However, after considering some factors, he did not release Division Commander Kong Ji. Even Company Commander Li Yun was asked to stay in the courtyard and not go out. He wanted to keep the news a secret to avoid alerting the enemy. After leaving behind 30 bodyguards to interrogate Muda and the others, Xianxia left the courtyard and brought the remaining 20 bodyguards to the Second Army's headquarters. The Second Army's headquarters was no longer as lively as it used to be. Even if some of the officers were still working, it was obvious that they were not in a good mood. They all looked absent-minded. It made sense. They were busy at the front, but someone was stabbing them in the back. If it were anyone else, they would not be in the mood to work. When Xianxia appeared in the Second Army's headquarters, many people looked at him with hope. Some even wanted to report some of the investigation team's misdeeds. However, when they saw that Xianxia was very anxious and only asked where the commander was, they could only suppress the anger in their hearts and did not stop him. In the backyard of the headquarters, Xianxia saw Muda be lying on the bed and resting. She had not seen him for a while, and he seemed to have aged quite a bit. His originally black hair had also gained a bit of white. As soon as Xianxia entered the room and saw who it was, he hurriedly got up. Xianxia hurriedly strode over and reached out to stop him. "Commander Shi, there's no need to be so polite. If you're not feeling well, just lie down for a while." "Sai, actually, I'm fine physically. It's just that I'm mentally tired." Shi Bei spoke to Xianxia as if he had seen his savior. He had already forgotten to be polite. Although Yang Chendong was a commander and the other party was only a division commander, the other party's surname was Yang. He was one of Yang Chendong's most trusted people. In terms of status, he, as a commander, was far inferior. The other party could become an existence that surpassed him at any time, and he knew this very well in his heart. Xianxia felt a burst of discomfort in his heart as he listened to Li Dong's words. A general who was good at war and strategizing was forced to lie in bed. This was the work of the investigation team. They really couldn't accomplish anything, but they were good at spoiling things. "Commander Shi, you've been wronged." Xianxia didn't know what to say. Just one sentence was enough to make this general, who had killed in all directions on the battlefield and didn't even frown in the face of death, cry. A good man with iron bones couldn't stand being wronged the most. At this moment, Shi Bei seemed to have found a soulmate. He stepped forward and held Xianxia's hand tightly. "Division Commander Yang, please tell the 6th young master that I've never really betrayed the 5-star army." "Alright, I will." "I definitely will." Xianxia also replied with a face full of excitement. He deeply felt the weakness in Shi Bei's heart at this moment and decided to tell him a piece of good news. "Commander Shi, I've already detained the people from the investigation team. After I see you, I'll send a telegram to the young master and explain the situation here in detail. Is there anything else you want to pass along?" "What? The people from the investigation team were detained?" Shi Bei's face was filled with shock after hearing this. It was just an investigation team of 6 people. Of course, Shi Bei didn't care about them. Any random team in the new Second Army could easily take care of them. However, the problem was that they were sent by the headquarters. They were the orders of City Lord Yu Qian. Yang Chendong also acquiesced. This gave them a lot of glory. They were like imperial envoys holding an imperial sword. No one dared to provoke them. They didn't even care about commanders and division commanders. Such people were actually detained by Yang Si. Shibei wasn't happy at this moment, but worried. He pulled Yang Si's hand and said, "Division Commander Yang, I'm afraid this isn't appropriate. After all, they did find out some problems." The problem Shibei was talking about was Tan Ing, the deputy commander of the 2nd Regiment of the new 2nd Army's 1st Cavalry Division. This person was the first person the investigation team called to talk to. The facts proved that they weren't shooting at random. This person was actually Baiming's man. To be specific, he really surrendered when the new 2nd Army pretended to surrender to Baiming. He became Baiming's spy in the new 2nd Army. It was because the Disciplinary Investigation Department obtained this information that they sent the investigation team. They also obtained City Lord Yu Qian's consent and Yang Qindong's acquiescence. It was also because of this that Muda dared to detain the 1st Cavalry Division's commander, Kong Ji. It was also because of this that Shibei couldn't raise his head. This was because he couldn't guarantee that there weren't any Baiming spies in the new 2nd Army. This also made the investigation team open and aboveboard. The problem wasn't discovered by them. It was our intelligence department that obtained this clue first and then reported it to the headquarters. Then, it was handed over to the Disciplinary Investigation Department to handle. At the end of the day, Muda and the others only benefited from this information. Yes, that Tan Ing deserves to die. He actually ate our 5-star army's food and worked for Baiming. However, this doesn't mean that the other officers are the same. We can't spoil the whole pot of soup because of a piece of radish *T. Don't worry, I know how to report this to the young master. Yang Si said seriously. These words were said with reluctance, and he kept nodding his head. Obviously, he agreed with this statement. Seeing that Shibei agreed with his opinion, Yang Si hesitated for a moment before saying, "But Commander Shi, after Tan Ying's incident, we still have to investigate. My opinion is that we can transfer the new 2nd Army's officers in batches. After we confirm that there are no problems, we can arrange for them to be transferred to new positions." This was the main reason why Yang Si had come to look for other people. No matter what, Shibei was still the commander of the new 2nd Army. If they were to move her officers, and it was a big move, it was reasonable for them to inform her first. Of course, we won't move the main officers. We also won't move those officers who have already been checked and confirmed that there are no problems. Yang Si was afraid that Shibei wouldn't understand, so he made a promise overnight. They could move the officers, but they couldn't move too many of them. Otherwise, it would really hurt the new 2nd Army's foundation. Yang Si wanted to continue explaining because he wanted to lower Shibei's guard. If even the commander couldn't figure it out, then the new 2nd Army's ability to work would definitely drop. What Yang Si didn't expect was that right after he finished speaking, Shibei already nodded in agreement before he could even say some comforting words. Division Commander Yang Si, I wholeheartedly agree with this matter. After going through this crisis, the new 2nd Army can't be messed up anymore. The headquarters is willing to screen them for us. This will save us a lot of work. Shibei actually agreed. Yang Si said somewhat embarrassedly, Commander Shi, these are your heartfelt words. You can't let your emotions affect your decisions. Of course they are heartfelt words. First, there was Su Yuan in the new 2nd Army, and now there's Tan Ing. To be honest, I'm almost too ashamed to face anyone. If the headquarters can investigate the background of these officers, it's of course a good thing for the new 2nd Army's combat power. Alright, I have one more request. Sure enough, Shibei still had a backup plan. Yang Si didn't immediately agree. Instead, he said with a smile, Commander Shi, there are no outsiders here. Just say what you want. Then I'll say it. I only have one request. Can you let the new 2nd Army participate in the war? Only in war can we quickly gather people's hearts. Shibei said with a face full of hope. He stared at Yang Si's eyes fiercely. Hearing that he wanted to participate in the war, Yang Si shook his head. He could understand Shibei's feelings, but such a big matter was far from being decided by him. The most important thing was that now the new 2nd Army's problem hadn't been thoroughly investigated. No one would be at ease to let such an army rush to the front line. If there was a betrayal before the battle, wouldn't it really cost people's lives? Yang Si had such a thought in his mind, but some words couldn't be said like this. He found an excuse and said, "I'm afraid this matter is not easy to handle. Commander, she is also a person who has fought in wars. You should know the importance of logistics and provisions. Right now, Shajing and Jingzhou are the main transit points for logistical supplies. Your new second army is very familiar with the situation here. If another army were to take over, I'm afraid it would be very easy for problems to arise." Of course, this was a reason. Shi Bei could understand the meaning behind these words. In fact, when he made the request, he didn't have much confidence. He said these words to prove his determination. Yang Si immediately rejected, and Shi Bei didn't mention it again. No matter what, the investigation team's people were detained, which was a good thing for the new second army. This was because the investigation team was clearly biased. Under the preconceived idea that everyone had problems, it was quite difficult for them to deal with the new second army's problem fairly. After comforting Shi Bei also promised that she would throw herself into work with a new attitude as soon as possible. Yang Si left the new second army's military headquarters. At the entrance of the military headquarters, he saw the soldiers he brought with him. "Master, the interrogation results are out. There is indeed a problem with Muda. Let's go back and talk." Hearing that the results were out so quickly, Yang Si was also very surprised. He didn't know that in front of the fierce and murderous soldiers, Muda, who only knew how to talk big but was very afraid of death, couldn't last more than a few rounds. Chapter 12:36. In the royal palace of Turpan, Yang Chendong was looking at the military situation map in front of the sand table. Beta Persei came to his side and whispered, "Young master, Yang Si sent an urgent message. It's about the disciplinary investigation department." "Urgent?" Yang Chendong slowly turned around when he heard this. Something big must have happened to be able to add the word urgent before the telegram. "Yes, this is the content of the telegram," Beta Persei said as he respectfully handed the telegram he had just received to Yang Chendong. Although Beta Persei and Yang Si had a good relationship. But if it wasn't for the urgency of the matter, he wouldn't dare to disturb Yang Chendong, who was thinking about military combat plans. To be able to do this, it could only prove one thing, that something big had happened. Yang Chendong took the telegram, and after the time it took to drink a cup of tea, the telegram was fiercely thrown to the ground. "What does this Meng Ziliao want to do? Does he want to disrupt the morale of my army?" The so-called Meng Ziliao was the vice minister of the disciplinary investigation department, second only to Chief Guan Wenjing. Because he was very filial, learned a lot of literature, and wrote good essays, he was valued by Yu Qian and several other officials in Qichen City. After a period of experience in other departments, they found that he was a talent, and this time, they recommended him to be the first vice minister of the disciplinary investigation department. It could be said that he held great power and reached the sky in one step. From this point, it could also be seen that Confucianism still had a deep influence on Yu Qian and others, and this was also unchangeable. After all, how could something that had been passed down for thousands of years be changed just like that? But this person, because he was too filial, this time he actually used his power for personal gain and helped his elder brother, the vice minister of the Army Staff Division, Meng Ziliao. It was said that Meng Zitong was also a capable person. He had a good grasp of the battle situation and had a good view of the overall situation. He had once been praised by Lung Song, the deputy commander of the army headquarters. He had also been recommended to Yang Chendong more than once. However, Yang Chendong considered that this person did not have any experience in leading troops. Everything he learned was just theory. Hence, he did not give him any important tasks, citing that there was no suitable position. Of course, Meng Zitong didn't know that this was Yang Chendong's excuse. He thought that there was really no suitable position. Therefore, he had been waiting. This time, the 5-star army had consecutively established the 5 new armies, the first army and the second army in the primordial city. All of a sudden, there were 3 vacancies for commanders, so he had no choice but to consider it. For this reason, he pestered Lung Song every day, and basically obtained his support. Meng Zitong never expected that Yang Chendong would have the final say in this matter. Other than some division commanders, deputy division commanders, and regimental commanders who were transferred from the army headquarters, the 3 corps commanders were all personally appointed by him. This made Meng Zitong very disappointed. Originally, there should have been a position for him among the 3 corps commanders. This huge contrast from hope to disappointment made him unable to bear it. However, what made him even more disappointed was that the 3 corps commanders in the new army that was about to be established would also be selected from the current division commanders. This made him unable to see the future for a while. When he returned home, he sighed because of this. All of this was seen by his younger brother, Meng Zitong. This Meng Zitong, who was extremely filial to his parents and had deep feelings for his elder brother, after a psychological struggle, set his goal on the position of the new Second Army's commander. Wasn't there no problem? Then he would use his authority to create a position. As long as he was willing to step down, the position of the corps commander would be vacant. Considering that there was such a big problem with the new Second Army, it should not be internally elected. The possibility of external transfer was very high. In this way, wouldn't his elder brother have hope? In order to complete this matter, Meng Zitong sent his trusted aides, Muda and Chang Wu, to be the leader and deputy leader of the investigation team respectively. The reason why he sent out 2 people at once was probably because one of them did not do his best and the other could be a substitute. However, he did not expect that because he sent out 2 people, Chang Wu would be the first to confess when faced with Yang Xi's personal interrogation. Then, under pressure, Muda repeated Meng Zitong's instructions to him. That was the main content of the telegram. Yang Xi was very sensible. He only described the process of the matter and did not make any suggestions on how to deal with it. Even so, Yang Chendong was burning with anger. The reason why he agreed to the investigation team's investigation in the new Second Army was because of Su Yuan and Nao Tan-ing. Yang Chendong did not want any traitors in the army. He still needed to be on guard when fighting against external forces. In addition, Yu Qian was the one who suggested it, so he did not refuse. Now, it seemed that some people had taken advantage of the loophole. Did they really think that he was so easy to use? Yang Fei Dian. Yang Chendong's face was filled with anger, and his eyes flashed with anger. Telegram Yang Wu and ask him to investigate this matter secretly. If it's true, send Meng Zitong and Meng Zitong to prison for abusing their power for personal gain and convict them because of City Lord Qian. Yang Chendong's voice carried a trace of viciousness. It was true that these 2 people were talented. Once they were used well, they might be able to do a lot of work or even big things. However, this could not be the reason why they could use their power for personal gain. He wanted to use this matter to tell everyone that in Xianxia and the 5-star army, there were many capable people, but loyalty was more important. If there was no loyalty and a selfish person in their heart, no matter how capable they were, no one would value them. Beta Persei wrote down the contents of the telegram and turned to leave. Of course, he had also heard of these 2 people. For example, Meng Zitong. Lung Song had once looked for Beta Persei and recommended this person. But so what if they were capable? They dared to use public power for personal gain and even wanted to frame a current army commander. Just based on this, the 2 of them would probably not be able to get out of prison for more than 10 or 20 years. The telegram was sent very quickly. In just 3 days, Yang Wu, who had received the order, had investigated the matter clearly. Receiving Yang Chendong's order was like receiving an imperial sword. Everything he did was green light. When the evidence was conclusive, the 2 brothers, Meng Zitong and Meng Zitong, were taken away from their respective offices. Taking away 2 vice commanders at once, and both of them held important positions and were even blood brothers, this matter quickly caused a huge commotion in Crimson City. For this reason, after City Lord Yu Qian heard the news, he personally asked about this matter. Soon, Yang Wu went to meet Yu Qian, Lung Song, and the others respectively. When he left, these people who were found were all covered in cold sweat. They had actually used their power for personal gain to this extent. They actually wanted to frame a military commander in public, and a military commander who had performed meritorious deeds. Whether it was Yu Qian, Leng Song, or the others, they were all covered in cold sweat. These two people were recommended by them. More importantly, from the beginning of the investigation until the arrest of this matter, no one had informed them. What did this prove? Yang Chendong was already very dissatisfied with this matter. This was what made them feel afraid. Immediately, Yu Qian and the others quickly wrote a letter of apology and sent it to Yang Chendong in the form of a telegram. In this regard, Yang Chendong did not reply and acted as if this matter had never happened. The reason why he did this was because Yang Wu had called and said that this matter was completely the fault of the Meng brothers. City Lord Yu Qian and the others had no idea at all. In the end, they were just being used by others. Since that was the case, why would Yang Chendong reply? Not replying was also a kind of attitude. Think about it yourselves. The matter was handled so badly, the most important thing to consider was how to correct it in the future. When this matter was revealed, those who knew the inside story were in an uproar, especially those who were arrogant because of their talents. They even tucked their tails between their legs. Who said that you had to be valued by others just because you were talented? Once you did something wrong, the building would collapse in an instant. This rang the alarm bell for many people, and it also made the atmosphere between the various departments in Crimson City correct. Things like private power being used in public were naturally reduced by a lot. The strategy of making a show of the mountain to scare the tiger was very effective. Since there was a problem with Muda's investigation team, as the chief, Guan Wenjing, quickly sent a new investigation team. This time, there were more than 30 members in the investigation team. They did things according to the principles of openness and fairness. Soon, the new Second Army was on the right track after changing a batch of officers. After the investigation team concluded that there was no problem, Kong Ji was acquitted and restored to his position. There was also the company commander, Li Yun. Just like his name, his luck was good. He was actually chosen by Yang Si and transferred to the logistics division as an advisor. It could be imagined that after a period of experience, it was likely that he would be able to amaze the world with a single brilliant feat when he was sent out. The new Second Army resumed its normal order. More and more troops, civilians, and provisions were transported from here to Ili. The war was about to begin. Ala Mountain Pass. After the 1st Cavalry Division led by DaiQue left Turpan City, they rushed towards their destination. Not long after he set off, 30,000 cavalrymen also came out of Ili City. They were Tushi's troops who were responsible for watching the 1st Cavalry Division under the order of King Harden Barter. Tushi was a general of the younger generation of Turpan. Because he was chosen by King Harden Barter, he was promoted from an ordinary commander who led thousands of troops to a general who led 30,000 cavalrymen. For a moment, he was full of pride and confidence for the future. As soon as he sent out a division, the other side sent out 3 times the number of troops to follow closely behind. When the news was reported to Yang Chendong, his eyes showed an expression of, as expected. Yang Chendong had considered 3 solutions for the main force of the 1st Cavalry Division being surrounded at the Ala Mountain Pass. First, use the 1st Cavalry Division as a bait to attract more enemies, and finally have a decisive battle in the middle. Second, let the 1st Cavalry Division break out of the encirclement. Presumably, with their strength and preparation, for times the number of enemies really couldn't do anything to them. Then they would look for an opportunity to fight again. Third, no matter what, gather a large number of troops and continue to attack. Besieging Wei to save Zhao would naturally solve the problem of the 1st Cavalry Division being surrounded. Chapter 1237. The 3 plans constantly lingered in Yang Chendong's mind, but in the end, he still chose the first plan. The second plan was a passive defense, which was not what Yang Chendong liked. The third plan was a little too risky, especially when the reinforcements were still on the way and had yet to arrive. It was a little rash. Only the second plan required a certain amount of time to prepare. He could take the opportunity to wait for more reinforcements to appear and fight a big battle. Just like how Yang Chendong didn't know that Kazakh had dispatched 80,000 cavalry, his enemies also didn't know that there were 3 5-star army reinforcements coming to Ili County. Send a signal to Commander Daiqua, tell him to slow down and delay for some time. At the same time, order the reconnaissance group and the light cavalry to set off. I want to see how many troops they will send. Yang Chendong slammed his right fist on the sand table and said in a firm tone. After the order was issued, Ding Shan led the reconnaissance group and Ma Xiangshan led the light cavalry, a total of 10,000 cavalry, to Lufan City. As soon as the news came out, General Aleifu of the Yarqiang tribe also led 30,000 cavalry to follow. It was the same as the 1st Cavalry Division that followed Daiqua before. 3 times the number of troops surrounded them. Interesting. Looking at the 3 times the number of troops, Yang Chendong smiled and looked at Beta Persei and said, Su He's new army should have rested enough. Send them out, I want to see if they can send 100,000 troops. After the order was issued, the new army under the leadership of Commander Su He went out. As if to confirm Yang Chendong's words, the Walla cavalry suddenly sent 100,000 troops, led by one of the 4 remaining generals, Bo Muir, and followed. Oh, I almost forgot about my old friend Yes Hen. Yang Chendong immediately laughed when he heard the news. Then he narrowed his eyes and said, Send a message to the commander of the 1st Army, Su Ku. Tell him to attack the Walla army directly from behind and find an opportunity to destroy the enemy. On the current battlefield, it seemed that the anti-5-star army alliance had the upper hand. They had 240,000 troops. On the other hand, the 5-star army only had about 70,000 soldiers. This 3 times the number of the 5-star army seemed to be enough to defeat the 5-star army. However, once the 1st army joined the battle, they would have 30,000 soldiers. Then, the 2nd army and the 5-star armies would add up to another 70,000 soldiers. In total, they had 100,000 soldiers. The difference in military strength would be from 240,000 to 170,000. There would only be a difference of 70,000 people. Most of the soldiers on his side were veterans, while the other side had many new recruits. With the combat strength of the 5-star soldiers, this was no longer a problem. If they could heavily injure the 240,000 enemy troops, they would be able to destroy at least a third of the enemy's army. Yang Chendong had his own plans, but what he didn't know was that the enemy also had their own plans. Their target was him, the founder of the Yangxia Empire, the soul of the 5-star army, and the Bugnam of Gojoseon of the Great Ming Dynasty. They would use the 1st Cavalry Division at the Ala Mountain Pass as a gap to surround them. Then, they would lure in a large portion of the 5-star army's main force and destroy them. They would be the first target of the anti-5-star army alliance. Since there was a first, there would be a second. The second was to surround the Turpan Empire's capital, where Yang Chendong was. In order to achieve this goal, Lily, Turpan, and Yarqiang would each send out 20,000 troops. Yes Hen would send out 40,000 troops, which was all of his remaining troops. Adding on the 80,000 troops from the Kazakh army, they had a total of 180,000 people. They were only attacking a single capital, so they were filled with confidence. The 5-star army sending out their troops did not surprise Yes Hen and the others. In their eyes, it would be strange if Yang Chendong didn't send out his troops. After all, the 1st Cavalry Division was the elite force of the 5-star army. They couldn't just watch and do nothing. With their advantage in numbers, as long as the 5-star army sent out reinforcements, Lily and the others would send out 3 times the number of reinforcements. At the same time, the dark plan was to take advantage of the fact that Turpan City did not have enough troops to attack. If they could take down Yang Chendong, the 5-star army would be torn apart. In order to complete this plan, Yes Hen was going all out. Not only did he send out all of his 140,000 cavalry, but he also used the 100 cannons that he had bought from Baiming. In short, he wanted Yang Chendong to die. A mountain could not accommodate 2 tigers. There could only be 1 king on the grasslands. In Yeshen's eyes, Yang Chendong was the biggest obstacle to him becoming the king. What he needed to do now was to kill this person who was the biggest threat to him. After that, he would regain his position as the overlord of the grasslands. Turpan City. A large number of the 5-star army was sent out. Until now, Yang Chendong only had the 20,000 Mongol army and the 2,000 black cavalry by his side. Oh right, there was also the 4th Division, who was escorting a large number of rations and other military resources to Turpan City. The reason why he did not send Narasong out was because this cavalry was made up of various Mongol tribes. Although there were many of them, their combat strength was a level lower. Such a cavalry force would not have a problem winning a battle. However, once they were surrounded, it would be difficult for them to form an independent army. If they were sent out and surrounded, it would be very dangerous. They would be the first army to be attacked by the enemy. Yang Chendong didn't want Narasong's 20,000 cavalrymen to fall into the danger of being surrounded and killed. Moreover, they hadn't occupied Lufan City for a long time, so the city still needed to be stabilized. The security of the 200,000 people in the city also needed someone to stay behind and manage. The ones left behind were not the strongest. Yang Chendong didn't want them to charge into battle with the enemy, but they could still be used to maintain order in the city and manage the ordinary people. It had to be said that in a foreign land, they could not unleash the full strength of the 5-star army. Just managing the hearts of the people required a lot of effort. When Yang Chendong did not want Narasong's 20,000 Mongol cavalry to be surrounded, they were still surrounded. Moreover, they were surrounded along with Yang Chendong. The news came from the Security Bureau and the CIA. Turpan, Ili, and Yarkyang had each sent out 20,000 cavalry, and their target was Turpan City. They're finally here? Towards this news, Yang Chendong was not surprised. Since he could surround Turpan City, why couldn't the enemy do the same? It was just that he did not think much of it. It was just 60,000 Mongol cavalry. How could it be so easy to take down Turpan City? Although Narasong's Mongol army was not strong, they could still defend against 60,000 Mongol cavalry. Yang Chendong had never been a careless person. As a precaution, he still gave the order to the 4th Master Lu, who was rushing over to the capital of Turkmenistan, to speed up the operation and report back to him as soon as possible. Once he had the 4th Lu Division by his side, Yang Chendong would not be afraid of anyone attacking the city. The telegram was sent out, and there was a reply very quickly. However, it was not good news. Commander Ling Dechang said that there were at least 40,000 Mongol cavalry around them. If not for the firearms in their hands, they would have charged over long ago. However, these Mongol cavalry still relied on the speed of their warhorses and their proficient riding skills to fire arrows from time to time, slowing down the 4th Lu Division's advance. Commander Ling Dechang also said that at this rate, it would take them at least 10 days to reach Turpan City. 10 days? That's enough. Send a telegram to Commander Ling Dechang. Tell him to play it safe and not act rashly. Yang Chendong snorted. He had already guessed that the ones blocking the 4th Lu Division were Yeshin's Wara. Were they finally unable to bear it anymore? But so what if they slowed down the 4th Lu Division's advance? They were a fully equipped Mongol cavalry master, not someone that could be touched by 40,000 Mongol cavalry masters. Otherwise, they would not be able to return. As long as he defended Turpan City to the death for 10 days, once the 4th Lu Division arrived, the siege would collapse on its own. At this moment, Yang Chendong was still full of confidence, but he never expected that everything would change in the afternoon. Before the 60,000 cavalry from the other 3 countries arrived, 80,000 cavalry had already appeared outside Turpan, surrounding the city so tightly that not even a drop of water could escape. If not for the fact that Yang Chendong was cautious and gave the order to close the city gates, these 80,000 Mongol cavalry masters would have taken the opportunity to charge into the city. However, even if they did not attack immediately, the appearance of these 80,000 Mongol cavalry masters was still out of Yang Chendong's expectations. Shortly after, General Song also reported that in this short period of time, many civilians in the city had suddenly launched a counterattack against the Mongol army. Although the number of casualties was not high, it took up a lot of their energy and they were unable to fully defend the city. The civilians of Turpan City did not have the time to move out. They had only been informed of the relevant policies and laws. If not for the siege outside, these civilians might have approved of Xia's actions. But now, even if they were rescued by their own people, most of them still wanted to return to Turpan City. No matter how Turpan treated them in the past, this was still their roots. Not everyone would forget about righteousness for the sake of profit. Many of them had their own standards, and many of them were unwilling to leave their homeland. Inform Commander Dao Xiao to send out his 2nd Battalion to patrol the streets. If there are any provocations, kill them. Yang Chendong's eyes flashed with anger. He was willing to think for the civilians of Turpan City not because he was afraid of them, but because he wanted to integrate all of them. That's right, it was the integration of all races, not the unity of all races. Yang Chendong did not believe that different races could live well together without any conflicts. The only reason why they had not appeared was because the time was not right. Chapter 12:38. In order to prevent future troubles and to create a harmonious environment for future generations, Yang Chendong wanted there to be only one nation and one nation in this world. When everyone was a part of it, they would forget their previous identities. After 2 or 3 generations, they would slowly get used to it. This way, the so-called differences between nations would slowly disappear. Of course, in order to achieve this, there must be a prerequisite. The farmers must have their own land, the merchants must have their own products, and the workers must have their own strength. All in all, everyone would have food to eat, everyone would have work to do, and everyone would be able to live a better life through their own efforts. Yang Chendong wanted to use his own efforts to let the citizens live a better life. Even if it was a foreign race, he would not be too prejudiced. The prerequisite was that the Han people's rights would not be harmed, and they would not be treated unfairly. In fact, they would even be treated better than others. He believed that if this continued, there would be a day when the world would belong to the Han people. However, this did not mean that he was afraid of these foreign people, especially those who opposed him. If they went overboard, he would not mind killing one as an example to others. Just like now, it was a special period. With the sudden appearance of external enemies, he would not allow any internal problems to occur. After Dao Xiao received the order, he excitedly led 1,000 black cavalry soldiers out of the palace. When they arrived on the streets, their murderous aura frightened many people. Some people who originally wanted to take advantage of the situation could not help but reveal shocked expressions. They were already considering whether it was appropriate to make a move now. However, there were always some people who did not believe in heresy. Some of them were staunch nationalists who only wanted to be Turkmen. Even if they had to die, they would die here. There were also some people who had opportunistic thoughts. They had seen how the 5-star army treated the citizens. Not only did they not oppress them, they even helped the citizens. This was something that they had never seen before. Because of this, these people did not believe that the previously benevolent 5-star army would suddenly turn hostile. When these two types of people gathered together, they decisively made their move when they saw the black cavalry passing through the streets in an orderly manner to restore order and security in the city. They rushed towards the black cavalry with sticks and some iron weapons. They were challenging the dignity of the 5-star army and challenging Yang Chendong's bottom line. Stop! Anyone who comes within 10 meters will be killed. The awe-inspiring Blade Howl did not immediately give the order to kill. Instead, he gave the enemy a chance to retreat. However, such kindness was seen as weakness by some people. Some of the red-eyed people ignored Dao Xiao's warning and continued to charge forward. There were even some people shooting arrows in the dark. Obviously, they wanted to muddy the waters and fish in troubled waters to reap the benefits. Arrows pierced through the air and landed in the midst of the black cavalry. Some of the arrows even hit the bodies of the Black Knight Dragon Guards, but they were all blocked by the black armor made of fine iron that had extremely strong defensive properties. There were still people charging forward and shooting arrows. At this moment, anger flashed across Dao Xiao's face. He spat out a word. The black cavalry, who had long been enraged and could not wait any longer, immediately drew their bows and arrows and launched a counterattack at the targets in their eyes. A series of arrows were reflected and dozens of shouts came from the darkness. Those were the people who wanted to shoot arrows. Cries of agony rang out on the streets. Over 60 bandits with various weapons had been shot by arrows, and there were still some who had not died. At this moment, loud cries of pain came from their mouths. The black cavalry retaliated. The moment they attacked, it was like a thunderbolt. They did not have the slightest intention of holding back. This scene frightened many people. Human nature was often like this. The more you retreated, the more they would think that you were weak and easy to bully. They would then become even more vicious and act like an evil person. On the other hand, once you acted tough, they would feel fear from the bottom of their hearts. At this time, they would become docile sheep, waiting to be slaughtered and dealt with. The Black Cavalry's sudden counterattack obviously had the effect of the latter. In an instant, many people shut their mouths. Many people in the dark put down their weapons. They were shocked and frightened by such a decisive action. Patrol the streets in groups of 50. If there are similar cases, Dao Zhao's eyes did not show any signs of weakness. He knew that blindly killing would not solve the problem. However, there were times when showing off one's fists was very effective. Just like now. Everyone was looking at him in shock. The murderous aura that he had felt before had subconsciously lessened. This was the benefit of killing to stop killing. After the order was given, groups of black cavalry instantly went far away and headed to other nearby streets. To be able to become the capital of Cultivation, the city was not small. The places that they needed to patrol were also very wide. Dao Xiao did not leave. Instead, he stayed with a group of 50 people. Behind them were the Mongolian cavalry and some Cultivation youths who had volunteered to join the 5-star army. They were busy clearing the streets. It was just like how there had been traders in China. There were people who lowered their heads to the strong everywhere. Although these people did not have any backbone, wasn't this what Yang Chendong needed? The appearance of the second group of black cavalry instantly suppressed the chaos in Cultivation's capital. Occasionally, there were some who managed to escape. However, at this moment, they could only hide in dark corners and did not dare to do anything. After the internal problems were dealt with, the next step was to deal with the external enemies. Very soon, a piece of news reached Yang Chendong's ears. Apart from the 20,000 Walla cavalry that was personally led by Yeshen, there were 60,000 cavalry that belonged to the Kazakh Khanate. Of course, Yang Chendong was not unfamiliar with the Kazakh Khanate. After all, this was the next place that he wanted to conquer. From the information that the intelligence department had sent over, the Kazakh Khanate was currently at war and had not been completely unified. Now, it seemed that the intelligence was lagging behind. Speaking of which, this could not be blamed on the intelligence department. Yang Chendong's speed in conquering the Kazakh Khanate had greatly exceeded the expectations of many people. It was the same for the intelligence department. They had only been established for less than 10 years and did not have a strong foundation. Furthermore, the Kazakh Khanate was simply too far away from Yang Xie's sphere of influence. No one had thought that they would meet in such a short period of time and even go to war. Naturally, the intelligence department there was limited, so it was normal that they did not send back any timely information. Looks like this Yeshen is becoming more and more mature. Yang Chendong's reaction was so fast that he instantly thought of a lot of things, including the fact that the 1st Cavalry Division was surrounded by a large number of troops. It must have been planned a long time ago. One part of the plan was to kill him. 80,000 cavalry surrounded the city, but he only had 20,000 B-class troops and 2,000 black cavalry troops. But in the end, the number was still too small. Now, he had to face 80,000 cavalry, and then there would be the support of 60,000 cavalry from the other 3 countries. The situation was very bad no matter how he looked at it. Young Master, immediately send a report to the new army and ask Commander Su He to lead the troops back. Beta Persei also felt an unprecedented tension and could not help but give an idea. No. Yang Chendong shook his head. He also thought of this method just now, but then he rejected it. Since he could think of it, how could the enemy not think of it? They had also sent out 100,000 Walla soldiers, but they were right behind the new 3rd Army. If they were to turn back at this time, a bloody battle would be inevitable. Although the new army's strength was not bad, the 100,000 Walla army were also elite cavalry. With 3 times the number difference, it would not be easy to deal with them. If they were not careful, they would be surrounded and eaten. Seeing that Yang Chendong rejected the suggestion, Beta Persei said anxiously, "Then send a signal to the commander of the 4th Division and ask him to speed up the march and come back as reinforcements." Yang Chendong rejected again. The 4th Division had the heavy responsibility of escorting the provisions. There were a total of 1,000 carriages of military supplies, all of which were needed by the 5-star army when they ventured deep into the inner regions in the future. There was no room for any mishaps. Otherwise, the soldiers would have no food and no pay. How could such an army display their fighting strength? This would not do, that would not do. For a moment, Beta Persei was anxious. His mission was to protect Yang Chendong's safety. He did not dare to imagine what would happen if something happened to the young master. He was afraid that even if he did not blame himself, the other brothers would take his life. Seeing that things were not going well, he could only take a step back and say, "Young master, then we will give up on the capital of Turpan. While the encirclement is not fully formed yet, our 2,000 black cavalry will protect you and open a bloody path." Right now, a lot of provisions and gold and silver have been hoarded in the capital. Although most of these were left behind by Hardenbarter when he escaped, they are now in our hands. These things are ours, we can't hand them over. After Yang Chendong rejected the idea, Beta Persei was speechless. If it was any other time, he would inevitably say that they valued money more than their lives. Beta Persei finally stopped talking. He turned to Yang Chendong and said with a smile, "Well, you don't have to worry. The enemy hasn't attacked yet. You have to have confidence in yourself and in our warriors." Beta Persei smiled bitterly. Obviously, he thought that this was the young master's way of comforting him. With 22,000 people, he had to face 80,000 no. It was 140,000 cavalry. He really had no chance of winning. "Okay, since that's the case, send a telegram to Ling Daqiang. Tell him about the situation here and ask him to send an advance march here. Well, don't forget to remind him that if anything goes wrong with the money and food, he will lose his position as a division commander. Also, don't inform the other army, division, or regimental units about the encirclement." Yang Chendong said with a very serious face. He knew too well that if he didn't say it harshly, once Ling Daqiang knew that they were in danger, he would definitely bring his army to kill them. If that was the case, the money and food would be taken advantage of by the enemy cavalry. This was something that Yang Chendong absolutely didn't want to see. Seeing that Yang Chendong had agreed, Beta Persei's face lit up with joy. After agreeing, he ran straight to the dispatch room. Chapter 1239. The 4th Division of the Lu Army. It had a total of 8,400 soldiers. However, such an army of less than 10,000 was escorting 1,000 carriages of food and fodder pulled by livestock on the land of a foreign country, and no one dared to provoke them. Just like now, they could see the silhouettes of cavalrymen in the distance, but they did not dare to get close to this army. It wasn't because of anything else, but because just 2 hours ago, a Kazakh Khanate cavalry squad of 300 intended to charge over from a relatively narrow area, but they were indeed routed 200 meters away. 200 meters was the time when the muskets showed their prowess and bows were powerless. None of the 300 cavalrymen survived, all of them killed by bullets. This scene shocked many people, and it also made the Kazakh Khanate cavalrymen cower. Of the 40,000 cavalrymen that surrounded the 4th Division, there were 20,000 Walla cavalrymen and 20,000 Kazakh Khanate cavalrymen. However, facing the 4th Division of the Lu Army, the Walla cavalrymen who had already suffered countless losses naturally did not dare to act rashly. Instead, it was the Kazakh Khanate cavalrymen who charged forward. In the end, they suffered a huge loss. Because of this, General Gu Lijiang had no choice but to give the order to follow from afar and not get close. The blood of the 300 corpses had not dried up yet, and with this as an example, no one dared to take the initiative to approach. This allowed the 4th Division of the Lu Army to proceed forward safely. When General Gu Lijiang saw this scene, he was furious. He went to find the general of the Wala cavalrymen, the deputy general that Yeshen trusted a lot, Chao Lu. General Chao Lu, the 5-star army's muskets are so powerful. What's the point of us following them? This was what Gu Lijiang could not understand. Since they could not get close, what were the 40,000 people doing here? To watch the show? If he knew this would happen, he would have followed the army to attack Turpan. That way, the siege would be faster. Compared to Gu Lijiang's dissatisfaction and impatience, Chao Lu's face was calm and unhurried. General Gu Lijiang, there's no need to be anxious. Since the leader asked us to come here, he naturally has his reasons. Don't worry, we will be needed soon. Chao Lu was right. At this moment, the temporary headquarters of the 4th Division was indeed in an uproar. Beta Persei had sent a telegram. When he found out that Turpan City was surrounded by a large number of troops and that Yang Chendong only had 20,000 Mongolian cavalry besides the 2,000 black cavalry, Dechang was shocked. He immediately ordered the commanders to come to a meeting. He even had the urge to give up everything to rescue Yang Chendong, because he knew very well that without the 6th young master, what would happen to the 5-star army in the future? The 4 regimental commanders were confused. When they arrived at the temporary headquarters, they wanted to ask what had happened. However, when they saw Division Commander Dechang's face, which was as dark as the night, they didn't dare to ask. Instead, their gazes landed on a telegram beside the table. Out of curiosity, the first commander, Gao Xiang, reached out and took the telegram. He originally thought that it wasn't important, otherwise, it wouldn't have been thrown here. But when he read the contents of the telegram, his eyes widened and his breathing became heavy. Sir, my 1st regiment requests to go to battle. What's going on? The other 3 regiment commanders also walked over in succession, surprised by Regiment Commander Gao Xiang's reaction. However, when they all saw the contents of the telegram, they all had the same reaction. 2nd Regiment Commander He Wen, 3rd Regiment Commander Lu Zheng, and 4th Regiment Commander Yi Xingfeng all shouted in unison, Division Commander, our 2nd Regiment, 3rd Regiment, 4th Regiment, requests for battle. All of you shut up. Ling Dechang was very satisfied with his subordinates' performance, but he immediately stopped them. Now that the 6th young master is in danger, even if he requests to go to battle, it won't be your turn. I've thought about it, I'll personally lead the team. When he said that he would personally lead the team, the 4 commanders were first stunned, then they all objected in unison. Why not? Ling Dechang had already thought of this result, but at this moment, he had already made up his mind. Even if he had to risk being punished, he wouldn't change his mind. It just won't do. The 6th young master once said that unless it's necessary, a division-level leader can't personally go to the battlefield. Although the situation is dangerous now, there's no need for you to personally lead the team. The 1st commander, Gao Xiang, was the first to come up with a reason to object. Compared to the other commanders, Gao Xiang as the 1st commander was undoubtedly the strongest. He was also someone who had been recognized by Yang Chendong, just like the other commanders who could only address Yang Chendong as Bugnam of Gojoseon, but he could already be called the 6th young master. This change in address represented a difference in status. Yes, now is not the time for the survival of the 4th Division Lu, so you can't personally lead the troops. The other 3 commanders also expressed their opinions. On one hand, everyone was indeed concerned about Ling Dechang's safety, but the most important thing was that they wanted to snatch this job. Once he was going to lead the team, they naturally wouldn't have a chance. Ling Dechang was naturally aware of the thoughts of the 4 commanders under him. However, he didn't point it out. Instead, he said, I've made up my mind, so you don't have to persuade me anymore. Of course, I still need an assistant. Which of the 4 of you is willing to go with me? Ling Dechang had his own ideas. In the telegram, Yang Chendong said that he couldn't lose the provisions. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to be a division commander anymore. However, he didn't say that he couldn't lead the troops to save people. He took advantage of this loophole and decided to personally lead the troops. This also represented his respect and protection for Yang Chendong. Originally, the 4 commanders wanted to continue persuading Ling Dechang to let go, but now, The moment he said that he still needed an assistant, the mentality of the four commanders immediately changed. Even if they couldn't be the main commander, it was still an extremely honorable thing to be the assistant commander. At that moment, the four commanders immediately started fighting for this position. They went back and forth, talking about their own advantages and the opponent's disadvantages. It was very lively. Yang Chendong was in Turpan City, which had already been surrounded. It was extremely urgent, so Ling Dechang didn't want to listen to the commanders below continue fighting. He immediately shouted loudly, "Enough, don't say any more. How about this, I'll pick the generals." First commander, Gao Xiang. When his name was called, Gao Xiang was full of energy. He was very happy, thinking that his division commander really thought the most highly of him. Gao Xiang's strength is outstanding and he does things with ease. He will replace this division commander and continue to escort the provisions to Turpan City. 2nd Regiment will cooperate with him. 3rd and 4th Regiments will follow me to Turpan City to resolve the situation. Ling Dechang was very clear that if these people continued to argue, there would never be a result. He might as well give the order himself. Gao Xiang, who had been called out, had a happy expression. When he heard that his strength was outstanding and he did things with ease, his face bloomed into a smile. However, the next words made him freeze on the spot as if he was struck by lightning. This shouldn't be like this, right? Didn't he already call out his name? 2nd Regiment Commander He Wen also had an ugly expression. He didn't think that he would be left behind. His expression was bitter. Some people were happy, while others were sad. 3rd Regiment Commander Lu Zheng and 4th Regiment Commander Yi Xingfeng's faces were bright. If possible, they wanted to kiss Ling Dechang's face right now to express their excitement. Since the order had been given, naturally it couldn't be changed. Seeing that the 3rd and 4th Regiment commanders had gone to gather the troops, Ling Dechang looked at Gao Xiang and He Wen and said, "The two of you were left behind because I have high hopes for you. There's only one request. Even if the troops are small, the supplies are not lacking. In order to ensure the completion of the mission, I'll allow you to reach Turpan City a little later. However, the supplies cannot be lacking. Otherwise, you can just wait to become ordinary soldiers." This was the meaning of going all the way. No matter how unwilling Gao Xiang and He Wen were, they had to agree and do their best. Even if the number of troops was small, the mission was still to ensure quality and quantity. Just as the order was given, the 3rd and 4th Regiments had already gathered. Every soldier brought 3 sets of ammunition to ensure that they had enough when facing the enemy. With Ling Dechang's order, the 3rd and 4th Regiments, as well as the guards of the division headquarters, walked out of the 4th Regiment's troops and headed towards Turpan City. At this time, under Turpan City, the 60,000 Kazakh cavalry had already surrounded the city. Kelly finally heaved a sigh of relief. He had long heard that King Wunan of Damyang had a very elite black guard by his side. Their equipment was excellent and their combat strength was unparalleled. If such an army suddenly charged out of the city, he really didn't have absolute confidence in stopping them. Now that the city was surrounded, the Black Guard still hadn't appeared. This made Kelly overjoyed. At the same time, he laughed heartily at the leader of the Wara, Yeshen, and said, "Great, Bugnam of Gojoseon has already lost his last chance to escape. According to the Han people, he's now a turtle in a jar. Next, he's at our mercy." Yeshen was also very happy. After planning for such a long time, the Kazakh cavalry that was arranged as a backup plan was finally used, and they also blocked Yang Chendong in the city, which made them see a bright future. Yeshen firmly believed that as long as Yang Chendong died, no one in the Great Ming army would be his opponent. At that time, it would be time for him to dominate. Previously, he could severely injure the Great Ming Emperor Zhu Qizhen. If Yang Chendong hadn't appeared, he could have even captured him alive. He believed that he could do the same in the future. The two of them were in a very good mood. At this moment, they should be drinking horse milk and eating mutton. However, before they saw Yang Chendong's head, they suppressed their excitement and sat together to discuss what to do next. Chapter 1240. Encirclement was not the same as annihilation. As the capital of Cultivation, the walls of Cultivation were not short, and they were very sturdy. There were more than 20,000 soldiers in the city, which was Yang Chendong's support. The next thing they had to do was to kill their way into the city. Neither Yes Hen nor Kelly were fools. On the contrary, they were very shrewd. They knew very well that they had brought cavalry this time. They were not afraid of anyone charging on the grasslands, but attacking a strong city was not something they were used to. Let's wait for a while. Hardenbarter wants to take back the capital the most. Among the 20,000 troops he brought, there are 10,000 infantrymen. It's best to leave the siege to him. After some discussion, the two decided to wait. The situation on the battlefield was in front of everyone. Yang Chendong would not have any reinforcements in the short term. The closest to Cultivation was the new army that had just left the city 2 days ago. But if they dared to return, the 100,000 Wala army behind them would tell them the serious consequences of doing so. The second was the 4th Lu Division, but it would take them 10 days to get here. With this time, they would be able to launch a fierce attack on Cultivation. Compared to the reinforcements, the armies of the other 3 countries had already set off. Especially the 20,000 soldiers of Cultivation. Because they were the closest, they could arrive at noon tomorrow. It would only take half a day, so they could afford to wait. Both Yes Hen and Kelly were too smart. They were afraid that they would lose their strength in the siege. But sometimes, being too smart was not a good thing. Otherwise, there would not be the saying of being too smart for your own good. What they didn't know was that by not attacking immediately, Yang Chendong would have ample time to prepare for battle, which was very important in a siege battle. Like the enemies besieging the city, Yang Chendong's subordinates were also cavalry. They were also not good at defending a city. When Beta Persei finished sending the telegram and returned to Yang Chendong, he ordered people to open the treasury of the palace and take out all the silver inside. Take out the silver? All of them? Beta Persei asked, puzzled. He didn't understand. They were already surrounded, so what was the point of taking out the silver? Yes, all of them. Yang Chendong nodded heavily. This time, he wanted to see how powerful money was. With the order given, 2,000 Mongol cavalry and 500 black cavalry headed straight for the palace treasury. The treasury was opened, and a small mountain of silver appeared in front of everyone. With so much silver suddenly placed in front of them, many of the Mongol cavalry felt dizzy. All of them would never be able to earn so much silver even if they were poor their entire lives. At that moment, their greedy gazes were fixed on the pile of silver. All right, have you seen enough? Once you've seen enough, move the silver, Beta Persei shouted. He seemed to have expected something like this to happen. The 500 black cavalry behind him acted as a supervisor. This shout instantly woke everyone up. Only then did everyone remember that there were still Azura's soldiers watching from the side. Thinking about how terrifying the black cavalry was on the battlefield, the 2,000 Mongol cavalry suppressed the excitement and greed in their hearts. One by one, they orderly placed the stacks of silver into the bags and carried them out of the treasury. Beta Persei personally went to supervise the distribution of the silver. Ba Daojiang, the deputy commander of the Black Cavalry 1st Platoon, led 200 black cavalry soldiers. They held gongs and walked on the streets. As they walked, they beat the gongs and shouted, "The chance to get rich is here. For those who have the strength to do so, the good news is here. Those who want to earn big money, gather at the square in front of the palace. The chance to get rich is here. For those who..." These repeated shouts followed Ba Daojiang and the others as they walked down the streets. After an hour, almost everyone in the city knew about this. Everyone was curious. Immediately, many people walked out of their houses and headed towards the palace. In the largest square in front of the palace, 5,000 Mongol cavalry soldiers stood around with their swords out of their sheaths. Each of them had a solemn look on their faces, giving people a feeling that strangers should not get close to them. But no matter how strong the pressure was, it still could not stop everyone from approaching the square. It was not for any other reason, but because at this time, the square was piled up with all kinds of silver. When Beta Persei was moving the silver, he roughly calculated that there was about 2 million silver in cash. From this, it seemed that King Hardenbarter left in a hurry this time. He had no choice but to leave behind so many treasures. More than 2 million silver. If it was written as a banknote of 100,000 silver, it was really nothing. Most people only saw it as a number. But now, all of them had been replaced with cash. The impact it gave off was so strong that it couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Yang Chendong came to the square under the escort of Longwei's 1st Platoon Captain Chiovi. He saw the sea of people and the greedy gazes with red eyes. This result made Yang Chendong smile with satisfaction. Although the result had not been announced yet, Yang Chendong already had enough confidence because he believed in the power of money. Everyone quiet down. Yang Chendong's chi sank into his dantian. At the same time, he raised his hands and then pressed them down. Just this one action caused the originally lively square to become completely silent. Yang Chendong was very satisfied with everyone's cooperation. Riding on the white dragon, he had a warm smile on his face. His eyes wandered around the crowd, and his voice rang out again. Hello everyone, I am King Wunan of Daimyong, and also the Heaven Khan of the Grassland. When his voice fell, the square was still silent. If it had been another occasion, in Yangxia's territory, the shouts of Long live Bugnam of Gojoseon and Long live the Heaven Khan would have shaken the heavens. Yang Chendong, who was already prepared, was not disappointed at all. After introducing himself, he continued to speak loudly. I believe many of you already know that Turpan City has been surrounded. The people surrounding us are your former masters, the Turpan army, as well as the nearby Yilabali army, the Yarkiang army, the Wala army, and the Kazakh army. There are about 140,000 of them. Sure. When he finished speaking, many people in the square were shocked. Although some of them knew that the city had been surrounded, they were not very clear about who the enemy was and how many of them there were. However, when they heard Yang Chendong speak in such detail, some of the braver people's faces changed drastically. There were also some citizens who were worried about the Turpan kingdom. Smiles appeared on their faces. They could finally be their own people again. There were all kinds of expressions and all kinds of thoughts. This was not beyond Yang Chendong's expectations. He had just occupied Turpan not long ago, so he didn't have much contact with the locals. The migration work had just finished in 8 Mile City, so the news had not spread to Turpan yet. It was obviously impossible for the locals to have any good impression of him. It was because he knew that it was impossible that Yang Chendong did not think of using a few words to convince them to work for him. What he really relied on was money. There are 140,000 enemies outside, and we only have 20,000 cavalry in the city. The difference is nearly 7 times. If we fight this battle, I'm afraid that we will lose and Turpan City will have to surrender. I believe that this king and everyone knows the result of this. Yang Chendong's frank words immediately received a lot of approval. It was clear that everyone knew how to calculate and knew that it would be too difficult for the latter to make a comeback. Seeing that many people nodded in agreement, Yang Chendong was satisfied, but his face showed an expression of anger as he continued to speak. Since everyone knows how to calculate this debt, how can this prince not know how to calculate it? Since we can't beat them, we can just run. Don't tell me that our 20,000 cavalry won't be able to carve out a path of blood before the enemy completes their encirclement? To be honest, this king is also a human. Like everyone else, I am afraid of death. When he said that he was just like everyone else, he was afraid of death. His words resonated with even more people. When they looked at Yang Chendong, their gazes were no longer filled with admiration, but with a sense of closeness. After all, if he was too high and mighty, it would only create distance. It was difficult for his words to truly resonate with people. The atmosphere at the scene also changed because of Yang Chendong's words. This was the result that Yang Chendong wanted. Because he was about to use his trump card. Without the foreshadowing from before, the effect of this trump card would inevitably be reduced. Yes, I can leave Ji. Seeing that everyone's attention was on him, Yang Chendong continued, in fact, I was also prepared to retreat, but a letter changed my mind. Now, the leader of the Wara Empire, Yeshen, outside the city, hates me to the bone because he has lost to me many times. He wants to eat my flesh. In fact, he did eat a lot of flesh and blood on the grasslands. He even said that eating human flesh is good for his body. When these words were heard by the commoners, many of their expressions changed. They did not expect that there would be such a cruel person in the world. Being the enemy of such a person was really a dangerous thing. After a few words, everyone had an impression of Xianxia who they had never seen before. He must be a man-eating demon. It was better not to meet such a person. But at the same time, many people were interested in the letter. They wanted to hear what was written in it, that Bugnam of Gojosian did not escape. Of course, the reason why everyone believed Yang Chendong's side of the story was because Yeshen's Wara Empire had been active in the north of Turpan many times. He was not only fierce but also cruel. Anyway, as a former enemy, there were no good rumors about him. It was precisely because Yang Chendong understood this that he boldly thought of such a killing move this time. Chapter 1241. First, he explained the actual situation, announcing the number of enemies outside, treating everyone with sincerity. Next, he said that he was also afraid of death, trying to get closer to everyone, judging them by his own standards. Finally, he mentioned Yeshen's savagery to show everyone. Finally, in the end, he used his trump card. Yang Chendong's face was filled with anger and grief. I believe that many of you are curious as to why this king hasn't left, right? Alright, this is the letter. He suddenly raised his right hand, and a piece of paper appeared in front of everyone's eyes. When everyone's gazes were focused on him, Yang Chendong took the letter and immediately read it out loud. My enemy, Bugnam of Gojosian, I didn't think that you would finally be surrounded by me. Do you know that I've never been in such a good mood? Oh, you must be very sad, very angry. But what can you do? Right now, I represent the Five Forces Alliance, with 7 times your military strength. I don't believe that you can make a comeback this time. Oh, that's right, you might be thinking of escaping. That's right, with your 20,000 cavalry, you do have the ability to do so. But don't forget, aren't you the self-proclaimed Heaven Khan, the self-proclaimed savior of the world, treating the common people extremely well? If you dare to escape this time, will you? Once my army enters the city, I will immediately slaughter everyone in the city. At that time, whether it's the elderly or the children, whether it's men or women, not a single one will be left alive. And these people's deaths are all because you fled in fear of the enemy. These mistakes will all be placed on your shoulders. This chief will also announce to the world that these people died because they submitted to you and weren't protected by you. Isn't that fun? How about it? Do you still dare to run? If you run, I'll kill you. I won't go back on my word. Yang Chendong read the letter out loud, word by word. Your eternal enemy, Xianxia, has left a letter. Yang Chendong raised his head and looked forward after the last sentence was uttered by him. At this moment, the entire square was filled with tens of thousands of citizens. However, it was so quiet that one could hear a pin drop. Everyone was dumbfounded. They did not expect Xianxia to want to kill them. He wanted to massacre the entire city. Something completely unexpected happened. Yang Chendong took out a second letter under everyone's watchful eyes. Everyone, after this prince received the news, I also sent a letter to Xianxia. I explained to him that I may have taken over Turpan city, but not only did the people here refuse to submit to me, they even hate me to the core. Therefore, using you to threaten this prince is useless. But I didn't expect that he didn't believe me at all. Instead, he sent me a second letter. I'll read it to everyone now. My enemy, Bugnam of Gojosian, are you afraid? Do you think I will believe you? Let me tell you, the more you disassociate yourself from these lowly citizens, the more I believe that they are your people. Therefore, don't try to make me believe your words. Oh, right. Do you know why this leader didn't attack the city immediately? I'm waiting. I'm waiting for the Turpan army to appear so that they can attack the city first. I want to watch their army kill their own people. Don't worry, they will definitely listen because 4 out of the 5 countries support this move. They have no choice. I'm sure it will be very interesting. Just wait, after killing these people, you, Bugnam of Gojoseon, won't be any better. Just wait for me to take your head and eat your heart and lungs. Ha. After the second letter was read, the entire square fell into a deathly silence. It was obvious that everyone was shocked by the contents of the letter at this moment. This cruel leader of the Walla actually wanted the Turpan army to slaughter them. This caused everyone's hopes of being rescued to sink to the bottom of their bones. At this moment, not only did they not hope for the Turpan army to appear, they were even afraid that they would appear in front of them. When the two letters were read, the reaction of the citizens was to the satisfaction of Yang Chendong. Following that, he wanted to make a request. Everyone, since this place has already been occupied by our 5-star army, the citizens here are our people. Whether you admit it or not, this prince thinks so. If you want me to abandon my people and just run away, this prince cannot do it. Therefore, I've decided to stay here and fight against the enemy with you. To tell you the truth, this prince's army is currently heading towards Turpan City. As long as we can hold on for a few days, we will be able to coordinate with the enemy and resolve the situation. When Yang Chendong said that he wouldn't give up, many people revealed moved expressions. When they heard that reinforcements were coming, many people's eyes revealed a look of hope. Only, with our 20,000 soldiers, I'm afraid that we won't be able to defend the city for a few days. Then, it will depend on everyone's strength. Of course, this prince will not force anyone. You can also choose not to contribute. I don't believe that Yes Hen will massacre the city after taking it down. But if you believe in my people, this prince's army is willing to defend the city with everyone. Do you see those silvers? Anyone who participates in defending the city will receive 1 tael of silver a day. If you kill the enemy, you will receive half a tael of silver for each person you kill. If you kill 10 people, you will receive 5 taels of silver. After the battle, you can come to the square to retrieve your own silvers. If you unfortunately die in battle, your designated successor will receive 10 taels of silver as compensation. Remember, this prince will not force anyone. Even if you earn so much that your hands go numb and don't want to fight anymore, you can go home and rest. As for the silvers that you receive, this prince can swear in the name of the Heavenly Khan that they are yours. I will not take them back and no one will try to steal them. After finally revealing his goal, the crowd in the square immediately began to discuss. There were even quite a few people who simply stared at the silvers without moving. It was clear that they had been stimulated by this large amount of wealth. 1 tael of silver was roughly equivalent to 2,000 yuan. In the Ming dynasty, 1 tael of silver was equivalent to 1,000 copper coins and could buy 400 kilograms of rice. In the Ming dynasty, 1 kilogram was equivalent to 1.5 taels, so 1 tael of silver could buy 400 kilograms of rice. Now, the price of rice was around 4 to 5 yuan per kilogram. As long as they participated in the battle, they would receive 2,000 yuan a day. For the Turpan people who only earned a few hundred yuan a month, this was undoubtedly a large temptation. Also, even if they died in battle, their families would receive 20,000 yuan. In this era where human lives were cheap, this already made many people speechless. The most important thing was that they could receive the money on the same day. Yang Chendong had even sworn in the name of the Heavenly Khan. This was definitely a heavy oath. There was no one who didn't believe that they wouldn't be able to receive the money. Some people even began to consider how many enemies they could kill on the battlefield and how much money they could receive. Striking while the iron was hot, Yang Chendong saw that the time was ripe. He pointed to the west side of the square where there were several dozen desks and said, "Do you see that? That is the registration area. If you want to participate in the city defense battle, you can go there and receive your weapons and identity medallions. Then, you can register your information so that you can receive the fruits of your labor." When Yang Chendong's words fell, many people were moved, but no one took the initiative to step forward. It was clear that although the temptation of the silvers was great, their lives were more important. Everyone wanted to take a look. In this regard, Yang Chendong didn't care. He firmly believed that there would be people who would step forward. As long as there was a first, there would soon be a second and a third. Until the supply couldn't meet the demand. Not to mention that he was already prepared. When he saw that many people were only moved but didn't take action, Yang Chendong's gaze swept to the east. The captain of the Black Cavalry, Peng Yu, nodded lightly and quietly turned to leave. Less than half an hour after Peng Yu disappeared, there was suddenly a commotion in the crowd. "We're here to sign up. I'm signing up too." "And me." In a short period of time, about 50 young citizens of Turpan City walked out from the crowd one after another. With someone taking the lead, more and more young people began to sign up. When Yang Chendong saw this scene, he couldn't help but let out a long sigh of relief. He thought to himself, "Great matter is done." The first 50 people who signed up were naturally found by Peng Yu. He had already received Yang Chendong's orders and spent money to find dozens of young people from Cultivation City who had a good impression of the 5-star army and let them act out such a show. It was said that everything was difficult at the beginning. As long as the beginning was good, Yang Chendong insisted that these young people would definitely give him a surprise. The registration was still ongoing. Yang Chendong had already left with most of the Black Cavalry. The remaining matters here would be handed over to the two captains, Qiu Vi and Dao Xiao, who would take turns to guard the silvers in the square. In November in Tulyafan, snow fell from the sky. Yang Chendong rode on the white dragon and led the Black Cavalry towards the palace. The snow fell on him, attracting the excited cry of Beta Persei beside him. "Young master, it's snowing heavily. This will be more advantageous for us to defend the city." "That's right." Yang Chendong nodded, his face brimming with a satisfied smile. Seeing that Yang Chendong was in a good mood, Beta Persei quickly asked with a learning attitude, "Young master, those 2 letters are probably fake, right?" "Oh, of course they're fake." Although that Yes Hen is brutal, he wouldn't go as far as to massacre the entire city. Not to mention, there's still the Tulyafan army in the alliance. Even if he wanted to do so, he would need their consent. Yang Chendong said as if it was a natural thing, his tone as if whoever believed it was a fool. Being looked down upon by the young master, Beta Persei's face flashed with embarrassment. But on the other hand, what kind of person was the young master? How could he guess his whimsical thoughts? At that moment, he thought that everything was logical. But because he knew that the letters were fake, he said worriedly, "Young master, a fake is a fake. If someone were to expose it, then..." Chapter 1242. Then what? Yang Chendong glanced at Beta Persei and asked, "What if they want to rebel?" "Ha, don't worry, they won't. As long as they take our money, they are our people. They will never betray us again." "They won't betray us if they take the money? What if they just work but don't put in any effort? Wouldn't it be better if they took the money and didn't have to take any risks?" Beta Persei looked at this problem from the most ordinary point of view. In his opinion, if he was one of them, it was very likely that he would make such a choice and decision. Work but don't put in any effort? Yang Chendong laughed as if he had heard a great joke. "Beta Persei, you still don't understand people's hearts. Come, young master, let me tell you, people are kind, but they are also jealous. Many people are kind to you because you are not much stronger than them. If one day you are too much stronger than them, kindness will turn into jealousy. At that time, they will scheme against you." Beta Persei was confused when he heard these words. He didn't understand what this matter had to do with the jealousy of people. Seeing that Beta Persei still didn't understand what he meant, Yang Chendong had to explain further. "Do you think most of them really believe those 2 letters? That's just an excuse to give them more reasons to take the money. Many of them even think that while they are taking the money we give them, they are thinking of ways to help the coalition army break through Turpan. This way, they can get benefits without becoming a sinner in Turpan's history." Beta Persei's expression changed when he heard this analysis. He was about to ask what to do. But then he saw Yang Chendong's confident expression and thought that even if the young master knew about it, he would still do it. It could only mean that he had already thought of a countermeasure. Sure enough, Yang Chendong's next words made Beta Persei's heart, which was already hanging high, fall back into his stomach in an instant. But do they really think that the money is so easy to take? We can give them the money, or we can take it back. There is only one condition, and that is that we are still in charge of this place. If the enemy really comes in, do you think Harden Barter will not take back the money? This is what he and his father have painstakingly accumulated for many years. Young heir didn't say anything immediately. Instead, he seriously considered the pros and cons of the situation. Then he patted his horse and said, "That's right. Once the Turpan army enters the city, they will definitely take back the silver. However, the people who have already taken the silver will definitely not agree. Thus, a conflict will arise." Yes. Yang Chendong looked at Beta Persei and nodded, looking like a child who can be taught. But this is not enough. We have to make them take this seriously, so we have to do another thing in a few days. When the time comes, you will. Beta Persei listened carefully. After a while, he laughed. "Young master, I understand what to do. Just watch, huh?" Ha. Yang Chendong's laughter also spread out in the snow, drifting far, far away. Outside Turpan, a new day had already arrived. By noon, the 20,000 soldiers of the Tulyafan kingdom had already arrived outside the western city gates. Leading the army was another fierce general of the country, Zhengzhou. In the army of 20,000, there were 10,000 cavalry and 10,000 infantry. Along with the army were many ladders, catapults, and other things. As soon as Zhengzhou arrived, he met up with Yexin and Kalai. After some discussion, the three of them decided to launch an attack on Turpan city immediately. "Two sirs, with my understanding of Turpan, the west gate is undoubtedly the best place to attack. Behind here is our hinterland. Usually, there are very few people who can pose a threat to it. As long as the catapults continue to smash down, it is very likely that it will be heavily damaged and give our infantry a chance to rush up the tower. Of course, the other three gates will also be attacked at the same time, or at least it will be a feint. There are not many five-star army in the city, so we have to split up their forces and create a better opportunity to attack the city." Zhengzhou concluded. Yexin and Kalai looked at each other and nodded at the same time. "Okay, the west gate will be handed over to General Zhengzhou. We will take care of the other cities. Don't worry, as long as there is a chance, we will attack for real." "That's great. It's already late. After we rest and prepare, we will attack the city tomorrow." In order to be in a better state and strive to take down Turpan in one go, Zhengzhou decided to go back and discuss the arrangements of the troops. He wanted to enter the city in one go. It was always the darkest before dawn. Regarding the arrival of the 20,000 Turpan reinforcements at noon, it could be seen clearly from the top of the tower. They did not attack, but instead began to prepare in an orderly manner. Things like catapults and ladders had already filled a large area. With the war coming, Yang Chendong called for a military meeting with the generals of the Mongol tribes under the command of Sun Song. They arranged for the defense of the four cities. "Everyone, tomorrow morning is likely to be the day when the enemy will attack the city. I want you to be 100% alert. No matter what, we can only win tomorrow's battle. We have to suppress all the enemies under the city so that they can't go up the tower. For this, even if we have to sacrifice a lot, it will be worth it. This is very important for the morale of the army. This is also very important for whether we can defend Turpan in the future. Don't worry, Heavenly Khan, we will do our best." The generals of the tribes stood up one by one and swore. They walked out of the barracks and rode back to the palace on the white dragon. Yang Chendong had been deep in thought, which made Beta Persei, who really wanted to speak, feel uncomfortable. "If you have something to say, just say it." Yang Chendong, who woke up from his thoughts, noticed Beta Persei's anxious look and asked aloud. "Yes, young master. According to the numbers just now, only 500 people in the city signed up to participate in the city defense battle. Among them, there are 50 people we arranged in advance. In other words, there are more than 200,000 people in the city, of which there are more than 40,000 young men, but only about 1% of them signed up." Beta Persei had an anxious look on his face. In his opinion, this number was still too low. It was completely below his psychological bottom line. 1%? That's quite a lot. Unexpectedly, Yang Chendong was not surprised when he heard this number. On the contrary, he smiled with satisfaction. Young master, isn't this too little? Beta Persei said, unable to figure it out. It's already quite a lot. 1% of the people participated in the first battle. As long as we use it well, this number will continue to expand in the future until it reaches a level that you don't dare to think about. Well, how about this? Send an order to General Sun Song to protect these 500 people as much as possible in tomorrow's battle. Don't let them have a large number of casualties. Although he did not understand, Beta Persei still agreed. But in his heart, he did not think so. Only 500 people were going to fight, and they still needed to be protected. If that was the case, what was the use of these young people? The night passed quietly. It seemed that the heavens were taking care of the Allied forces. In the middle of the night, the snow stopped and the wind stopped as well. When the sun rose the next morning, it shone on people's bodies and warmed them. A good sign. Even the heavens are helping us. Today, we must take Turpan City and wipe away the humiliation from before. Pass down the order, beat the drums, and prepare to launch the siege. After General Zhengzhou finished his breakfast, he looked up at the clear sky and was in a good mood. His heroic spirit was born. The thrilling sound of the war drums spread in all directions. The siege was about to begin. On the west gate tower of Turpan City, Sun Song was personally guarding it. This would be the first day of the siege and also the most brutal day. This was the time to compete the fighting spirit and morale of both sides. There was no room for sloppiness and carelessness. Standing on the west gate tower, he ordered the soldiers to place the boulders, pillows, and burnt tung oil in the designated places. After doing this, he inadvertently glanced at the 300 Turpan youths who were assigned to him and could not help but shake his head. According to the Heavenly Khan, not only could these people not be placed in the most dangerous front lines, but they also had to find a way to ensure their safety. He and Beta Persei had the same question. What was the use of letting these people come up? Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. Before the siege began, dozens of catapults were pushed out. Huge rocks fell from the sky and continuously hit the west gate wall. Every time they hit, there would be a deafening sound, and at the same time, the horn of attack would be blown. Below the west gate tower, thousands of Turpan soldiers were carrying siege ladders in one hand and scimitars in the other. They roared as they charged forward, their momentum astonishing. Prepare the boulders. Let's give them an appetizer first. Na Ri Song stood between the battlements and watched as the soldiers cleaned up the debris from the boulders and the archers seized every opportunity to shoot down. Na Ri Song nodded in satisfaction. He wasn't frightened by the enemy's morale. This was the best performance he could give. In a battle between two sides, especially in a siege battle, the defending side had a great advantage. As long as they were well prepared and had high morale, they could often fight one against three or even more. This was also why Yang Chendong dared to stay in the city and did not lead the army to break out. A large number of Turpan infantrymen under the city walls set up ladders and charged. In the first wave of boulders rolling down, many people were injured and fell. Some people were directly hit by the boulders and many died. The first wave of boulders stopped the charge of the Turpan army, but with the second wave of 1,000 infantrymen, the situation became grim again. Chapter 1243. Let's get closer before fighting. Prepare the sleepers. Na Ri Song fully understood Yang Chendong's fighting style. He decided to give his opponent a chance to fight back. This feeling of being disappointed right after seeing hope is definitely very satisfying. The siege of the other three cities also continued. Compared to the West Gate, they were much more peaceful. Many times, there were even ladders set up, but not many people attacked. Their main goal was to keep the five-star army in check. The siege on the city tower had already begun. Many people in the city had nervous expressions on their faces. At this moment, they were extremely conflicted. They wanted the city gate to fall so that they could return to Turpan, but they were also worried that the Wara Wara leader, Yes Hen, would really slaughter everyone in the city. Many people were at a loss for what to do. They couldn't see the light of the future, and all they could see and think was darkness. At this moment, on the official road leading from 8 Mile City to Cultivation City, a small-scale battle was taking place. After receiving Yang Chendong's telegram, Commander Ling Dechang didn't dare to waste any time. He led the 3rd and 4th Regiment of the 4th Regiment and left. Not long after they left, they were attacked by cavalry. The soldiers of the 4th Infantry Division had no choice but to stop and get into battle formation, waiting for the enemy to arrive. But every time they stopped, the enemy cavalry in the distance would also stop. They knew the power of guns and didn't dare to get close. Their goal was to slow down the speed of the army. It was snowing heavily, and bicycles could not pass through many places. The soldiers could only carry them. This greatly affected their marching speed. Dechang saw this and was worried in his heart. The 6th young master was surrounded in Turpan. He was under attack by several times the number of soldiers. The city could be in danger at any time. He urgently needed their support. But now, not only were they unable to reach Cultivation City ahead of time, but it seemed like they would be delayed. One could imagine how anxious Dechang was. Division leader, the soldiers are all very tired. The sky is about to turn completely dark. Let's find a place to set up camp. 3rd Commander Lu Zheng and 4th Commander Yi Xingfeng came in front of Ling Daqiang and gave their own suggestions. Ling Daqiang wanted to shake his head and say no. He wanted the soldiers to continue their journey. But when he thought about how difficult the road was to travel and how the enemy cavalry would harass them, it was very likely that chaos would ensue at night. If that were to happen, not only would they not be able to rescue Turpan, they might even lose their lives here. Even though Ling Daqiang was extremely unwilling, this was the reality. Ling Daqiang still nodded. All right, arrange for the guards to be on duty. Everyone else, seize the time to eat and rest. Tomorrow, those who fight for the treasures can go further. The situation waits for no one. Understood. How could the 2 captains not know how critical the situation was? He immediately agreed and went down to pass on the order. Ling Daqiang, who was left behind, looked in the direction of Turpan City and sighed inwardly. 6th young master, you must hold on. 5 li away from the 4th Master Lu, Chao Lu and Gu Lijiang were warming themselves by a bonfire. The heavy snow wasn't entirely a good thing for them. At the very least, the speed of their warhorses was greatly affected. It was impossible for them to quickly attack and retreat. This caused them to have no choice but to postpone their plan to harass the enemy. Of course, the heavy snow was more of a hindrance to the 4th Master Lu than to them. This made them extremely happy. If this continues, we won't even need to send out our troops. We only need to follow them and we can easily complete our mission. Gu Lijiang reached out and pulled a roasted lamb leg from the bonfire. She ate with a mouth full of oil as she spoke with a satisfied expression. That's right, the heavens are really helping us. Chao Lu also expressed his feelings. But when he thought of the previous defeats, he still spoke with a cautious tone. If there is a chance, we should still harass the enemy. No matter what, the longer we delay them, the greater our chances of victory. Don't worry. With our Kazakh cavalry taking action, taking down Turpan City is just a matter of time. Perhaps they have already taken down the city and good news is coming to us? In comparison, Gu Lijiang was much more optimistic. Without truly fighting with the 5-star army, it was impossible to understand how powerful they were. Turpan City. After a day of attacking and defending, the sky also turned dark. The night was simply too cold, greatly hindering the soldiers' performance. Even though he was unwilling, General Zhengzhou still gave the order to stop attacking the city. Within Turpan City, although the sky had already turned dark, the entire city was still brightly lit. Perhaps everyone was unable to sleep because they were in the middle of a war. Especially in the huge square in front of the palace, there was a sea of people. Looking from afar, there were shadows everywhere, and it wasn't an exaggeration to say that there were people next to people. After a day of fighting, the 500 warriors finally came down from the city walls. At this moment, everyone was waiting to see if they would be able to get their hands on the silver. In the distance, with a group of 200 black cavalry soldiers clearing the way, the 500 warriors finally appeared on the square. It must be said that these 500 people were all in different shapes and sizes. Among them, there were some who were injured, some who needed the support of others to walk, and 2 who were directly lying on a single stretcher covered with white cloth. Needless to say, they had already died in battle. Alright, the battle is over. Come and receive your reward. Who is Tumu? Please come over. Beta Persei's loud voice finally had a use. Just this shout alone was enough to spread his voice far and wide. A young Torpon man wearing temporary armor excitedly walked out from the group of 500 warriors and came in front of Beta Persei. General, I am Tumu. Beta Persei raised his head to look at the sturdy and honest-looking young man and nodded with satisfaction. Not bad, today you performed the best. Not only was your courage on the city walls commendable, but you also killed 4 enemies. According to the rules, participating in the battle to defend the city will earn you 1 silver per day, and killing an enemy will earn you half a silver per person. You received a total of 3 silver taels. This is for you. As soon as he finished speaking, he raised his hand and 3 silver taels fell into the hands of the young man named Tumu. Wow! At this moment, many of the onlookers revealed a fiery expression in their eyes. This was 3 silver taels. For many ordinary people, even if they lived frugally for a year, it would still be enough to cover their expenses. Holding such a huge sum of money, Tumu's face was filled with excitement. Since he was young, his family was poor and he didn't have the ability to learn any skills, let alone study. Usually, he just did some manual labor. Although he worked very hard, he only earned a few copper coins a day. In a year, he might not even earn 3 silver taels. Now that he received this in just 1 day, of course he was excited. Thinking that with this money he could let his parents, brother, and sister live a better life and buy a few new sets of clothes, he was even more excited. He could even imagine what kind of earth-shaking changes would happen to his family with this money. With a face full of smiles, he only came back to his senses when Beta Persei's voice echoed in his ears again. This money is yours. You can take it. Ah, wait. Tumu suddenly opened his mouth to speak. Beta Persei, who was about to call the next person, was immediately stunned. What? Is there something else? Yes, General. I want to ask, can I continue to guard the city tower tomorrow? Looking at Tumu's hopeful gaze, Beta Persei immediately smiled and said, Of course you can. Over there is the registration area. Just sign up again. It will be the same in the future. If you want to participate in the battle the next day, you only need to sign up again. Thank you, thank you. Tumu hurriedly bowed and thanked him. Then he took the 3 silver taels and rushed towards the registration area. This scene was seen by many people. Under the envious and jealous gazes, some people also wondered if they should also sign up. Although there were some risks, they could earn a lot. After Tumu, the 500 warriors received their rewards one after another. Although they were protected in the first battle and most of them didn't kill the enemy at all, the 1 silver tael a day still made them very excited. Especially the 2 who died in the battle. One of them was very unlucky and was directly injured by a huge rock from the catapult. It could be said that he died in battle without even seeing the enemy's appearance clearly. But after his death, Beta Persei still gave his designated successor 10 silver taels as a settlement fee. Even after death, there was still money. Such a realistic side was placed in front of everyone. Many people were moved. Seeing that almost 90% of the 500 participants went to the registration area to sign up again, and seeing that these people would take away a large amount of silver taels at this time tomorrow, some people finally couldn't help it. They seemed to be afraid that the small mountain of silver would be taken away by others, so they immediately joined the registration team. 20 tables were prepared yesterday, but there were very few participants. Today, the 20 tables were filled with people in an instant. It looked like there was not enough space at all. It would be good if they could finish recording before dawn. Beta Persei immediately made a decision. He ordered people to bring over 100 tables and arranged for some soldiers to be in charge of this matter. Only then did he relieve the pressure. With this good news, Beta Persei returned to the palace and reported the news to Yang Chendong. Young master, good news, good news. The number of people who signed up for the battle today is about 10 times more than yesterday. It looks like there are about 5,000 people. Is that so? When he heard this news, Yang Chendong was not surprised at all. This was originally within his expectations. Human nature was like this. When there was good news, it would often rush forward. This was also human nature. Although he had been prepared for this for a long time, the smooth development of the matter still made Yang Chendong very happy. At this moment, he didn't seem to take the defensive battle of Turpan seriously. Instead, he put all his energy into the next battle at the Ayla mountain pass. Chapter 1244. With the large amount of money and weapons stored in the city, the only thing they lacked was a lack of manpower. Since the lack of soldiers was alleviated, there was nothing for him to worry about. However, the battle at the Ayla mountain pass involved too many forces. If the situation wasn't handled properly, the 5-star army would be defeated. Then, they would have no choice but to withdraw from this place. If they wanted to enter the Ayla mountain pass again, they would need a lot of time to prepare. Looking at the Ayla mountain pass marked with a red flag on the sand table, Yang Chendong frowned. Even the 1st Cavalry Division would not be able to break through the encirclement of 80,000 soldiers with less than 20,000 soldiers. Not to mention supporting the other allies. Naturally, Yang Chendong was not worried about the 1st Cavalry Division. He had already prepared and given orders. However, it was not realistic to expect them to support the other allies. But what if another force suddenly appeared? What would it be like if they worked together with the other allies? Yang Chendong thought as he looked at Wuxia city to the north of the Ayla mountain pass. If he remembered correctly, Bai Shuang's 4th Cavalry Division was there. Perhaps. Wuxia city. In the past half a month, Bai Shuang's injuries had already healed. Not only that, but he had also gained a lot of weight. This was naturally closely related to the care of his new wife, Rugi. If there was a woman who cared about him all the time and made him nutritious meals for every meal, it would be hard for a man not to get fat. With power in his hands, in charge of the famous 4th Cavalry Division, and with a beautiful wife by his side, Bai Shuang was living a godlike life. However, his peaceful life did not extinguish his will to fight. He clearly remembered his identity, and he was even more aware that the world was not yet settled, and there were even more important missions waiting for him. Husband, it's time to eat. Rufang appeared in the study with delicious food in front of Bai Shuang. After the food was placed on the table, Bai Shuang reached out and held Ruofang's delicate wrist. With a gentle gaze, he said, "It's been hard on you." "It's not hard at all. I like this kind of life." Ruofang's face carried a faint smile and satisfaction. "I also like the feeling of being with you." Bai Shuang sighed. However, his expression suddenly changed as he said, "But just now, a messenger sent word that the reserve force that would replace his 4th line in Wuxia had arrived." This also indicated that his comfortable life was about to come to an end. When he thought about the main force of the division that was surrounded, White Shuang felt a heavy responsibility on his shoulders. However, before Bai Shuang could say anything, Ruofang had already opened her mouth and said, "A good man should be ambitious. My man should not only accompany his wife. The battlefield is where he can show his talent. I know that the person who will replace my husband has come. You should do what you should do. I will also leave here and return to the 1st city to wait for your return." After all, she had worked for the CIA before, so she had her own sources of information. Naturally, she was very clear about what happened in Wuxia. Because of this, she also knew that it was time for the husband and wife to separate. Originally, Ruofang was the leader of the CIA in charge of intelligence work in this area. However, because she married Bai Shuang, this responsibility naturally had to be relieved. This was also the rule that Yang Chendong had set before. If the husband and wife both worked in important departments, not only would they not be able to take care of their family, but they might also form their own forces. This was not something that Yang Chendong wanted to see. In order to prevent this from happening, the moment Rufeng married Bai Shuang, she was destined to become a woman behind a man. She was destined to be a woman who could not be seen in public anymore. Thank you. Don't worry, I will definitely kill more enemies on the battlefield. Bai Shuang was touched by his wife's understanding. For this trust and waiting he had to perform well. Just one night later, Bai Shuang led the fourth line of 4,000 cavalrymen and left Hobokseri without anyone knowing. Because they left in the middle of the night, no one was alerted. Even the spies in the city arranged by the 5 nations did not notice this. When they woke up the next morning, the reserve force that replaced Bai Shuang in charge of Hobokseri's security was still under the banner of the fourth line. After leaving Hobokseri, Bai Shuang led the 4,000 cavalrymen across the snowy land. Their target was the 30,000 cavalrymen led by Turpan Tushi. They did not approach the 1st Cavalry Division. Instead, they chose to attack the 30,000 cavalrymen of Turpan first. This was the order that Yang Chendong gave to Bai Shuang. It was true that the 1st Cavalry Division had unparalleled battle prowess, but they were surrounded by 80,000 soldiers. Furthermore, they were under the command of the old general Teng Mushi. Even if Bai Shuang brought 4,000 cavalry with him, he would not be able to do much. The intelligence department had already reported Teng Mushi's information. He was an old man who was over 70 years old. In that era, he was definitely an old man. For Ili to send him out, it was enough to show the importance of this battle. According to the information, Teng Mushi had been idle at home due to his age and was preparing to retire. However, this time, due to the importance of this matter, not only did Prime Minister Eric personally go to invite him, even the king of Baalide personally went to invite him. It was because of Teng Mushi's appearance that Yang Chendong placed so much importance on him. It was also because he knew that Teng Mushi liked to be conservative in battle. He liked to talk about losing before he won. Yang Chendong was not worried about letting 80,000 people surround the 1st Cavalry Division. With Teng Mushi's many years of experience, he would not take risks. Unless the 1st Cavalry Division took the initiative to break out of the encirclement, the possibility of Ili attacking first was very low. Since Teng Mushi liked to play it safe, Yang Chendong allowed the 1st Cavalry Division to not move. They could also use this chance to tie down the 80,000 steel cavalry. Since they could not fight at the Ala Mountain Pass, Bai Shuang's orders were to work with Dai Qua of the Far Eastern Army's 1st Cavalry Division to deal with the 30,000 steel cavalry of Turpan. The Turpan cavalry following behind Dai Qua did not know that they had become the target of others. They continued to follow their opponents closely, watching their every move. Tushi, who was leading the troops, was already grumbling about this. Their Turpan country was strong in the past. Although they were not the absolute leader of Ili and Yarqiang, in terms of military strength, who dared to say that they were better than them? But even so, when faced with the 5-star army, they had lost 2 important cities, besieged Bali and Turpan, one of which was their capital. After 2 battles, the morale of the Turpan army was low. They needed a big battle to boost their morale. This time, the Tushi general who received the military orders secretly swore before setting off that he would perform well this time and become the first general in the Turpan kingdom to defeat a 5-star army. For this, he was confident that once they reached the agreed-upon location, he would launch a fierce attack. However, what made Tushi depressed was that his target, the Liaodong army's 1st Cavalry Division, which he saw as a thorn in his side, was moving so slowly that he was losing his patience. If it was just moving slowly, it would be fine. However, he could not stand the fact that they kept stopping. Originally, it was only a distance of 700 li. If the cavalry traveled on foot, it would only take 2 to 3 days. However, after half a month, they had only traveled 500 li. This made Tushi wonder more than once whether the other party was here to fight a war or to go sightseeing. Did he really want to help the world's #1 cavalry division? Or was he afraid of death and did not move forward? Not knowing what the 1st Cavalry Division wanted to do, Tushi's eyes burned with anger. However, for the sake of the overall situation, he could only force himself to endure. He had no choice but to endure. Before he came, King Hadenbar had given him a strict order. Unless the five-star army took the initiative to attack, they could not take the initiative to attack until they were near the Ayla mountain pass. Since he could not fight, he could only follow. Thus, Tushi endured along the way. However, when they were less than 200 li from their destination, the other party stopped again. This time, they stopped for a full 3 days. This made him so depressed that he wanted to bang his head against the wall. How the hell were they here to fight? They were clearly strolling faster than him. They stopped for a full 3 days. Tushi was annoyed for 3 days. Every day, when the scout appeared, he was looking forward to the good news of the other party's departure. However, day after day, he was disappointed. On the afternoon of the 3rd day, the scout came to his tent again. He knelt on the ground and reported the battle situation. What's wrong? There are still no signs of the other party leaving? Sitting on the big chair, Tushi leaned his body sideways and looked like he was about to fall asleep. Yes. The scout answered truthfully. All right, let's scout again. The result was as expected. Tushi immediately felt bored and waved his hand to dismiss the scout. However, after the signal was made, the scout did not withdraw. Instead, he continued to kneel there. This caused Tushi to be unhappy. Why haven't you left yet? Did you discover something new? The last sentence was naturally said casually. However, he did not expect the scout to nod there. I did discover something, but I can't confirm it yet. That's why I didn't dare to report it. Hearing that there really was a new discovery, Tushi was also interested. He raised his voice. Speak, your words are innocent. The scout was waiting for this sentence. Immediately, he seemed to be much more spirited as he said, General, according to this general's observation, something important seems to have happened to this 5-star corps cavalry. That's why they stopped moving forward. Chapter 1245. Important matter? What is it? Tushi didn't understand and asked back. Yes, I accidentally saw white silk hanging in their main tent today. The scout paused for a moment. Although he didn't have absolute confidence, he believed in the brilliance he saw at that moment. Therefore, he gritted his teeth and reported it. What? Suddenly, Tushi sat up straight, his eyes wide open. Say that again. Tushi's reaction gave the scout a fright, but he still suppressed the trembling in his heart and said, I inadvertently saw that the inside of the other side's main tent was hung with white silk. White silk, white silk. This time, he heard it clearly. Tushi fell into deep thought. From what he knew, there were only 2 places where white silk was hung. One was the place where cloth was produced, and the other was the place where people died. The first answer wouldn't appear on the battlefield. Could it be the second answer? It even appeared in the main tent. Didn't this mean that the general of the 5-star army met with an accident, and it was very likely that someone died? If it was said that a general who died on the battlefield didn't know anything, it was just like how Zhu Di, the founder of the great Ming dynasty, died on the grasslands. After all, the conditions for marching and fighting were not very good. If one accidentally contracted a disease, it was very likely that there would be problems due to not being treated in time. Otherwise, the Han people wouldn't have said that they died before they were born. If the general of the 5-star army had died in an accident, then it would be understandable why they had to stop all the time and even stay in a place that wasn't a battlefield for 3 days. Perhaps the reason why they stopped was because the general was sick, so they had no choice but to slow down. As for why they stopped completely, wasn't it because the general was dead and there was no one to take charge of the situation? Thinking back to the information he received, the army he was following came from Liaodong, which was thousands of miles away from here. The living environment there was very different, so the probability of getting sick was naturally much higher. Only this could explain the abnormal behavior of the 5-star army these days. Ha! As if he had finally figured it out, Tushi laughed heartily. He never thought that such a good thing would fall on him. Originally, he had the advantage in terms of military strength. Now that the enemy's commander was dead, wouldn't it be a mess? If he suddenly attacked at this time, the enemy would definitely not be able to withstand a single blow and victory would be right in front of him. At this time, Tushi was completely excited by this information that had yet to be confirmed. He was now thinking of only one thing, which was to win the battle and make a great contribution. After an unknown amount of time, Tushi finally stopped laughing. Then he looked at the scout and said, "Good, good. This time, you have made a great contribution. Immediately inform the other soldiers to come here for a meeting." Seeing that Tushi seemed to have made a decision, the scout asked with a guilty conscience, "General, are you going to attack?" "Of course. Is there any other problem?" Tushi asked unhappily. "No, this general was just thinking whether or not we should inform the king of such a big matter." The scout didn't dare to be completely sure of his information. If everything was fake, then wouldn't he have to bear the crime of making a false report? Inform the king? How long will this round trip take? If that's really the case, I'm afraid that the opportunity will be long gone. The 5-star army will also choose a new general to lead them. Tushi shook his head. Although he knew that making a move now would violate the orders given to him by the king, he still decided to take the risk and attack when he thought about how the king's orders were not given. All right, this general has made up his mind. Also, so what if this information is fake? We have 30,000 cavalry and the enemy doesn't even have 10,000 men. How can they be a match for us? Quickly go and pass on the order. These words dispelled the doubts in the scout's heart. That's right, the general had 30,000 soldiers. Their military strength was 3 times that of the enemy and they had taken the initiative to launch a sneak attack. How could they possibly win this battle? And once they won, wouldn't he also make a great contribution? At that moment, he didn't have any doubts and turned around to pass on the order. Not long after, all the junior generals arrived at the main tent. When Tushi announced that the 5-star army's general had died and the scout beside him confirmed this information with a confident tone, all the junior generals became excited. If there was a chance to win the battle and great contributions were within reach, who would refuse? An hour later, a new and temporary plan to sneak into the camp was born. After the junior generals received the new order, they all excitedly walked out of the main tent. However, they didn't know that their every move was clearly seen by the scouts of the 5-star army. Time slowly passed. Under Tushi's orders, the 30,000 cavalry ate their dinner earlier than usual and then waited for a long time for the sky to turn dark. This situation was also discovered by the scouts of the 5-star army. They reported the situation back one by one. A great battle was about to break out. That night, the east wind was 4 to 5. The biting cold wind was like a knife when it blew on people's faces. When the time came, Tushi, dressed in a suit of general armor, walked out of the tent. When he felt the chill of the cold wind, he couldn't help but laugh heartily. Good, good, the heavens are helping me. This kind of wind is just right to cover our army's movements at night. I order all the generals to be merciless when they approach the enemy camp. Whoever fights the best, this general will ask for a reward in front of His Majesty. Tushi's order quickly spread throughout the army. The generals in charge of the sneak attack all revealed happy expressions. They all seemed to have seen a great merit in front of them. Set out. With a wave of his hand, Tushi led a total of 25,000 cavalry out of the main tent. Only 5,000 cavalry were left behind to watch over the money and provisions. This was enough to prove how imperative this battle was and how confident they were. 25,000 cavalrymen were split into 5 groups, with 5,000 men in a group. This time, in order to achieve the goal of completely wiping out the 5-star army, Tushi had even sent troops to surround the enemy's retreat. In short, he wanted to create a huge victory and wash away the rumors that the Turfan army was inferior to the 5-star army. They walked through the snow. A large number of black figures constantly approached the 1st Cavalry Division's main camp. Even though the snow made it difficult to travel, no one retreated. Their warhorses moved as fast as they could. When they were less than 5 li away from the 5-star army's main camp, they still didn't see any of their own cavalry scouts. However, the army still didn't have any intention of stopping. At this time, it was like an arrow on a bow that had to be released. With the advantage in numbers, Tushi was confident that even if the enemy was prepared, the final victory would still be his. 4 li, 3 li, 2 li. They could already see the tent fire in the 5-star army's main camp. They could even see the silhouettes of the soldiers in the tent. Tushi shouted, "All troops, charge!" Immediately, the sound of the cavalry sounded like an earthquake. Other than the 10,000 cavalry outside, the other 3 groups of 15,000 cavalry charged towards the 5-star army's main camp from 3 different directions. At this moment, each of them had a ferocious expression on their faces. They waved their sabers and passed through the layers of obstacles under the snow. They surged through the tall piles of snow that the 5-star army had built beforehand and charged into the main camp. When they were 100 meters away, a wave of cavalry archers shot out arrows. Immediately, some of the soldiers on the platform were hit by the arrows. They didn't have any intention of resisting. The Turpan cavalry successfully entered the 5-star army's main camp. What's going on? There wasn't a trace of resistance. It also wasn't as chaotic as he imagined when the 5-star army was ambushed at night. General Tushi had a bad feeling. Everything was going too smoothly. It was so smooth that it made him feel that this wasn't an enemy camp, but a dead camp. Kill! The Turpan Kiliarchs who wanted to gain merit all shouted as they charged towards the nearest 5-star army's main camp. When they opened the tent with murderous looks on their faces, all they saw was an empty military camp. Of course, not all barracks were empty. For example, some barracks had some rice dummies made of grass standing there, although they were very crude. For some reason, they gave off a feeling that they were laughing at themselves for being fooled. Not good, we fell into a trap. Some of the Kiliarchs who reacted quickly realized that something was wrong and immediately retreated out of the tent. However, it was too late to leave now. Arrows covered the sky and fell like rain, landing in the middle of the Turpan cavalry who were about to retreat. Some of the arrows landed on the tents, causing a huge fire to burn. The fire borrowed the strength of the wind and instantly turned the entire camp into a sea of fire. The Turpan cavalry who were filled with killing intent a moment ago were like ants on a hot pan. They were instantly thrown into chaos. Shouts, howls, and even cries filled the air. At this moment, killing was the main theme and blood was the melody. In the darkness of the night, countless 5-star soldiers appeared from all directions with bows and arrows in their hands. In just 2 shots, who knew how many Turban cavalry were killed or injured, causing the enemy to fall into chaos and lose their direction of battle. Steady, steady, head to the east. There are 2 regiments of 10,000 cavalry there. Meet up with them. Knowing that he had been fooled, the Tushi general's face turned ugly. Especially when he saw that many of his men had been killed in such a short period of time, he hated those bows and arrows even more. These despicable Han people are playing with fire. Immediately break out of the encirclement, regroup with the main force and counterattack. Tushi roared angrily, but at this moment, why didn't he think about himself? Was his sneak attack really honorable? In comparison, he was just more despicable. Chapter 1246. The originally chaotic situation gradually stabilized due to Tushi's shouts. The army began to move towards the east. They wanted to join up with the 10,000 cavalrymen outside before launching a counterattack. However, they didn't know that the situation in the east wasn't any better than them. The 5,000 Turban cavalrymen who were in charge of the detour were being chased by the 5-star army. The ones chasing after them were the 1st Cavalry Division's 4th Regiment, Bai Shuang's troops. Stopping for 3 days, hanging white silk in the main tent, those were just a ploy to lure the Turban army out. From the looks of it, everything was successful. Tushi, who wanted to gain merit, didn't wait for them to reach their destination before making his move. However, the 5-star army had already expected this kind of sneak attack. After a discussion between Bai Shuang and Daikwa, they decided to beat the enemy at their own game. The final result of the discussion was that Daikwa would be in charge of burning the Turban cavalrymen who charged into the camp while Bai Shuang would be in charge of destroying the surrounding troops. Right now, Bai Shuang was carrying out his plan. In front of him was a large pit filled with Turkmen cavalry. Before the rest of the enemy cavalry could figure out what was going on, they were surrounded by 4 groups of godlike cavalry. First, they were killed by a volley of arrows, followed by a close-range charge. The general didn't know the soldiers, and the soldiers didn't know the general. With just a wave of attacks, the 5,000 Turban cavalrymen were completely disoriented. The number of soldiers was also rapidly decreasing. Very soon, the 4th Regiment had completely taken the initiative in terms of military strength. One could imagine that the next step would be a one-sided massacre. As for Tushi, at this moment he was trying his best to charge outwards under the long-range attacks of the archers. Until now, they had not even seen the shadow of a single 5-star army cavalry. All they had encountered were arrows that came from all directions, filling the sky with deadly arrows. When they charged in, they had to cross over piles of snow that were close to a person's height. When they left, it was the same. It was precisely because of the appearance of these snow piles that countless cavalrymen fell here. Seeing the number of soldiers around him decreasing, Tushi was burning with anxiety. At this moment, he only wanted to join the cavalry army in the east because he firmly believed that he still had the advantage in terms of numbers. Finally, after paying an unknown price and losing an unknown number of warriors, the snow piles were pushed to the ground one by one. Tushi, under the protection of a group of personal guards, followed the main force and killed their way out. In the distance, he finally saw the 5,000 cavalry stopped at a distance of 5 miles. "General, what's going on?" the Turpan Chiliarch asked with a look of surprise on his face. Originally, they thought that the people who escaped from here would be the defeated soldiers of the 5-star army. They never thought that it would be their own people. If it wasn't for his good eyesight, they would have killed each other just now. "Don't mention it." Tushi gasped for breath, and with a look of relief on his face, he said, "We've been tricked. This is an empty camp. The 5-star army knew that we would come. What should we do?" He didn't expect this to be the enemy's plan. For a moment, the Kiliarch's face was filled with shock. He didn't know what to do and even panicked. "What are you afraid of?" Seeing the panicked look on the Kiliarch's face, Tushi was furious. "Don't forget that even if we were ambushed, we still have the advantage in numbers. How about this? Let's immediately join up with the other team and kill our way back. I'd like to see how the 5-star corps, whose numbers are inferior to ours, will be wiped out by us in a real battle." Tushi was indeed very angry. He brought 30,000 cavalrymen but couldn't defeat the 5-star army, which had less than 10,000 cavalrymen. This made him feel great shame. While his heart was burning with anger, more than 100 cavalrymen escaped from the distance. Because it was dark, both sides couldn't see very clearly. However, a loud shout came from the Turpan army. "Who are you people?" The cavalrymen on the opposite side, who seemed like they could escape at any time, crazily rushed over while shouting, "We are on the same side, on the same side." They were indeed on the same side. They were the deserters from the 5,000 cavalrymen who were defeated by the sudden appearance of the White Shuang 4th Regiment. The arrival of these people told Tushi that his army had once again suffered a heavy blow. At this time, of the 25,000 cavalrymen he had brought with him, there were only about 10,000 left. Perhaps there should be some fleeing cavalrymen nearby, but in any case, in terms of numbers, he no longer had any advantage. "General, are we still going to kill our way back?" After losing another 5,000 cavalrymen, a Chiliarch in the army asked Tushi with a trace of uncertainty. At this time, Tushi's face was very ugly and the muscles on his face were trembling from time to time. He knew that he had suffered such a big loss, so of course he wanted to immediately kill his way back. However, considering the current turmoil in the army and the fact that he didn't know how many 5-star army cavalrymen he would have to face, there were too many uncertainties if he went back now. For a gentleman to take revenge, 10 years is not too late. Reason prevailed over anger, and in the end, Tushi suppressed the killing intent in his heart and said, "Retreat, let's return to the main camp first and then discuss further. These 5-star army can't escape." Tushi didn't forget that he still had 5,000 cavalrymen left in the main camp. If he met up with them and gathered some of the defeated soldiers, his strength still couldn't be underestimated. But he never thought that at this time, his main camp was already a sea of fire. Just a quarter of an hour after Tushi left with his 25,000 cavalrymen, a 5-star army appeared like divine soldiers. They were completely unprepared and didn't even think that someone would attack them. In just an hour, other than 500 cavalrymen who escaped, the rest were either killed or captured. At the same time, the money and provisions they left in the army were all given to the Dingshan reconnaissance group who was in charge of Tushi. The ones who suddenly appeared here were the Dingshan reconnaissance group that followed closely behind. Originally, his and Ma Xiangshan's light cavalry were being chased by the 30,000 cavalrymen of the Wuxia kingdom. In front of them were 30,000 Turpan cavalrymen and behind them were 30,000 Wuxia cavalrymen. This group of only 10,000 people seemed to be in danger of being attacked from both sides at any time. In the eyes of ordinary people, these two groups of 10,000 cavalrymen should be walking on thin ice with every step they took. But, unexpectedly, they actually chose to take the initiative to attack. With the help of the telegram, this technology that was definitely ahead of the times, Yang Chendong, who was far away in Turpan, organized this large meeting and achieved the goal of heavily injuring the 30,000 Turpan cavalrymen. And this was just the beginning, because Yang Chendong's next target was the Wuxia kingdom's 30,000 cavalrymen. This would be their second target. Before the news of the rapid defeat of Tushi's troops spread, Yang Chendong sent another order in the telegram. In the night, Bai Shuang's 4th Regiment, Dai Ku's 1st Cavalry Division and Dingshan's reconnaissance group began to merge together. Then, an encirclement began to form, waiting for the enemy to fall into the trap. Dingshan's reconnaissance group left first, leaving all of the heavy responsibility to the light cavalry commander Ma Xiangshan. In this regard, not only did he not feel fear, on the contrary, he was full of fighting spirit. Since it was called a light cavalry division, it could naturally develop the cavalry's speed to the extreme. Just based on this point, Ma Xiangshan did not put the 3 Wuxia armies behind him in his eyes. It was to the extent that if he wanted to, he could disappear from the enemy's line of sight at any time. But for the sake of the big picture, Ma Xiangshan did not do this. Not only that, he also deliberately slowed down his pace, and also deliberately spread the news of Dingshan's reconnaissance group leaving. Just like Tushi, Wuxia's Aleifu also received the order to closely follow the 5-star army in front of him, waiting for them to arrive at the Ala mountain pass to launch a large-scale battle. It was precisely because of this order that although the 5-star army in front of him was not fast, Aleifu was not in a hurry. Wasn't the enemy advancing towards the target set by his side? Since this was the case, it was enough. In Aleifu's eyes, the 10,000 5-star army cavalry in front of him were already turtles in a jar. He only needed to wait for a while, and when they arrived at the designated location, it would be time to destroy them. Just as Aleifu brought the 30,000 cavalry and maintained a certain distance behind the 10,000 5-star army cavalry, a piece of news suddenly reached his ears. The target he was closely following had changed from 10,000 to 5,000, and there were still 5,000 who were missing. Where did they go? Did they escape, or do they have other missions? Aleifu did not know anything about all of this. This was not because he was careless, but because the 10,000 5-star army cavalry he was watching were all quite strong. Regardless of whether it was the scouting group or the cavalry, they all had powerful anti-reconnaissance abilities. Once a scout left the main force and approached them, it would often be like a stone sinking into the sea without any news. In addition, apart from the Ala mountain pass, there were no other important cities nearby. Over time, in order to reduce unnecessary losses, Aleifu did not send people to watch the enemy. It was because of this that Aleifu was half a beat late in receiving the news of the scouting group's disappearance. After learning that the enemy had actually lost half of their men, Aleifu had a bad feeling in his heart. On the battlefield, any change could have an extremely important impact, not to mention the disappearance of 5,000 cavalry. No, I can't let the situation become even more complicated. Aleifu was afraid that the change in front of him would affect the overall situation, so he decided to abandon his previous plan and take action in advance. As long as the 5,000-strong cavalry of the 5th Star Army was wiped out, it would be equivalent to dealing a heavy blow to the 5th Star Army. This way, there would be a change in the military strength of both sides. In this way, even the 5,000-strong cavalry hidden in the shadows would be of little use. You're tuning in to the Wang Lin's Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.